I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 126. This is part 2 of my interview with Frank Murphy. Can't remember where we left off, but be sure you listen to part 1 before you get into part 2 here, or you'll be very confused. If you'd like to find out more about Frank, go to his website at frankmurphy.com or go to frankandfriendsshow.com. And make sure you also give him follows on all the social. Outbound links are on both of the websites. And subscribe to his YouTube channel for the Frank and Friends Show. And I appreciate Frank coming on and doing such a marathon episode. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode.
Anyway, celebrities. So Tupac.
So there's a lot of people who come by radio stations for interviews, and to the point where you could almost pick a field and I'll say, all right, here's somebody.
Yeah.
But what's more memorable to me are the rare instances of the celebrities who remembered me when they flip it.
Yeah.
I know who they are.
Yeah.
But they normally, I'm just a guy I'm not the star of the show.
Yeah.
Kevin and Bean are the star of the show. Jay Thomas is the star of the show. I'm just somebody on the support staff that they have to have their picture made or they have to talk to. But a few celebrities have an appreciation for everything else that is involved. Started with Bobcat Goldthwait, who we used to call me the omnipresent Frank, and because he would come on WAVA so often, every time he came through DC, and I would slide in and slide out of the studio giving notes and information to Don and Mike, and Bobcat wasn't paying attention. I'd slide right past him, and all of a sudden I'm over there with Geronimo, and he's like, oh, there's the omnipresent Frank has materialized. So he didn't know that I left Washington and got a job in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So when he comes strolling into K-Rock and I'm there, it blows his mind.
So I will say, I went and saw him and Dana Gould in Asheville right before the pandemic. He was nice enough, but Dana, it seemed like he was done peopling for the day. I'm going to use that term again. Whereas Dana Gould just sat there and kept talking to me.
Oh, wow.
And I made him laugh, which anytime you can make a comedian laugh is huge. Like for me, because I'm some schmuck that's,
So
he was on a show called Working.
Yes.
That had Fred Savage in his first grown-up role.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I go up and I meet him and I'm talking to him. I was like, and he's signing the poster or whatever. And I was like, man, I almost brought my Laserdisc copy of Working, of season 1 of Working, for you to sign it. And he goes, did they really release? I was like, no. And he was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He was like, you got me. You got me. And then he was like, I still talk to most of those people. They were all really, and he just started talking to me about Working. I was like,
that's nice.
Oh, I won't go. It was just a dumb joke. Okay.
No, making a comedian laugh is very gratifying because most comedians, and I'll call myself a comedian for the purposes of this experiment.
Okay.
When you hear a joke, it's like listening to music radio.
Yeah.
I know it's funny.
Yeah.
But my mind immediately goes to, oh, that's good, and I'm appreciating the crafting of it, and I want to know about why is it funny. So I'm not. So you see, comedians oftentimes will go, "Oh, that's funny. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Oh, yeah, nice," and they mean it legitimately.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at the scaffolding.
Yeah.
Of the joke. So when you make them actually laugh, it's because you've caught them off guard. And I did a bunch of comedian interviews when Side Splitters was around. And I remember Julie Scoggins was in town, and she said, we're just having a conversation. And those interviews I set up to be deliberately recorded, long form, 20-minute plus interviews that I was going to edit down to 2 minutes for radio and then release the rest of it on the internet.
Yeah.
She says something, and I say something about it was a joke. It was not even a joke. It was just a comment. We're talking about mason jars and moonshine and paper bags, hiding it in a bag, and I come up with a little tag to her bit.
Yeah.
Well, I go to see her that night at Side Splitters, and my joke is in the show. I said to her, when I said that this morning, I didn't know I was stealing your material. I just was going along with the conversation. She said, "Oh, honey, I stole that from you."
Yeah. There's I was hanging out with a comedian after a show, and I'm just sitting there talking to her, and then all of a sudden she says something, and I quipped, "I've got one in me about once a week. I've got one in me." And she doubled over and started laughing, and she grabbed me and she was like, "Oh my God, are you using that?" And I looked at her, I was like, "I'm not a comedian. I'm a graphic designer. Use it. I don't give a shit." I am not.
It's gratifying.
But
It's
it was
very
so
gratifying,
funny. I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm an idiot who draws pictures for a living."
Well, on this sidetrack of interviewing comedians, I worked with guys, Don and Mike specifically, but others, who would insist on being the first interview. I don't want to interview Bobcat or whomever after they've been on our competition because no one's going to listen. It was their insecurity mindset, right? Well, it occurred to me that with comedians especially, you don't want to be their first interview because they're not warmed up.
Yeah.
In fact, when I had this series of interviews, I deliberately scheduled them for like in the 9 o'clock hour as they finished their morning radio tour. They're coming over, and we're going to sit on the couch, and it's going to be different. It's going to be weird for them. It was more like what we're doing now. Instead of putting them up at the console, we sat on at the couch. We had microphones like you've got. We did the bit. Actually, we even videotaped a bunch of them for YouTube. And it was a completely, all these guys and girls, females, males, whatever, comedians, I'm doing a completely different style interview with them. Yeah. And I know from experience that most comedians hate being interviewed by wacky morning DJs because wacky morning DJs are so massively insecure, and they try to one up the comedian, or they try to tell the comedian, "I don't like comedy, but do your bit, make me laugh," and it's very antagonistic, much like a comedy club can be antagonistic, where the audience is like, "Make me laugh, funny man."
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be like that, and I knew that I had the luxury of editing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried about it. All I need is 2 good minutes out of this. So let's have fun. And it turns out, usually we're creating these wonderfully gold pieces of gold. My highest viewed video on my personal YouTube channel, which I started before I started the Frank and Friends show, is Leanne Morgan. And I looked the other day. I think it's got 60 or 70,000 views, which is way out of the norm for me. But it's not because of me; it's because of her.
Yeah, I heard her name mentioned on a podcast the other day, and I was like, "Holy shit, they're talking about her." I was like, "Nobody ever talks about her," and in my mind, she's huge.
Yeah, Nate Bargatze talks about her sometimes.
Yeah,
she's been on his show. Yeah, she's huge here.
Yeah,
but is only now becoming a national touring act.
I will say, because you mentioned his name, the most famous person I've ever interacted with, I won't say met, but interacted with, is Tom Cruise. He came here for a
movie screening at Pinnacle.
Yeah, and this is going to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but I am not. They had this barrier set up, and he was walking down it and shaking hands and taking photos and signing shit. And I'm like, I'm not going to get up front. I'm too big. I'm going to let the people here. So I'm just kind of standing there. And this dude who's like an autograph hound comes up and pushes his way to the front, pushes a little girl out of the way. And when he does that, I just reach over and grab him and yank him back. And I happen to do that right as Tom Cruise is walking up. And I think it scared him for a second because he was like,
Well, you're
up.
twice his height.
yeah, he is also very tiny. And he looked up at me and he figured out what was going on and he gave me like a thumbs up
Good.
or a point at me.
Good.
And but I threw that guy back and I was just like, no, what the fuck, just move.
All the local media people who met him that day
Yeah.
glow about it. They
Oh,
said
yeah.
it was very pleasant and it was a nice encounter.
My friends who work at Regal said it was like the most prep of just like
Yeah.
getting it done right. But I think it was he wanted to do right so he could go down that line and actually meet as many people as possible without getting
Sure.
swarmed.
It sounds jaded, but I went to one of the first ones of those they did with Johnny Knoxville and Jessica Simpson for
And
Dukes of Hazzard.
I think Stifler was Sean William Scott because my friend and her daughter went and they were like, Jessica Simpson could not have been nicer.
Yeah, they were all very nice.
Stifler could not have been nicer. They were like, Johnny Knoxville was kind of a dick to us.
Well, by the time he got our end of the rope, it's media, so they're all going to be fine.
Yeah.
But we had to be there for hours, and we had basically they put your name of your radio station or TV station on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and that was how much space you got.
Oh,
You
good
had to
Lord.
stand on this piece of paper with your name on it or your station's name on it, and meanwhile you've got now. Granted, we're there, and they're there for hours. So I'm chatting with the TV women and the other radio women and men who were there, and that's kind of fun. And then the thing happens. They come whisking by. You get your few seconds. I get my
Yeah.
audio drop of Jessica Simpson, who was an artist that we played on the station. I've got to get her to say the name of the radio station.
Yeah.
That's basically why I'm there. And Johnny Knoxville, if I can, also. And then I realized that was a waste of why?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
even for any of these other stars, to stand there for hours on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper so I can have a 15 to 30 second encounter with them on
Yeah.
an audio tape. So I stopped going. I said, let somebody else go. Let one of the other younger people go. I don't need this.
So I will say there is a musician that is known, not huge, but known, that I asked them to be on the podcast. And they're like, I can give you 15 minutes on this day. And I responded back with, I think I'm good.
Yeah, that's not the name. That's not the format of your podcast. No.
And it's
You even asked me about that. You say, "Are you okay with an open-ended conversation?"
yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, you don't know me that well, then, obviously, because
But
you'll be pushing me out the door by the time
Oh.
we're done."
But with that person, it's like, I don't want to be a dick about it, but it's, I follow you on Instagram. I see what you do all day. You're not doing anything. Stop big timing me because your episode's not going to get that many downloads.
Yeah.
I am just curious. You make an interesting type of music that I want to ask you about that.
Right.
I was like, I don't, and then seeing nothing, I was like, okay, cool. Never mind. I won't ask you again.
Yeah. Well, I did a few of those red carpet things in L.A. and actually with Kevin and Bean, was cool because Warner Brothers used them to MC some of those red carpet
Oh, wow.
world premieres of movies.
Yeah.
So there were instances where, as their producer / helper, Warner Brothers put me to the task and said, "Here's a list of who's coming," or there were index
Yeah.
cards. You have to recognize them as they're approaching, find their card in the stack, give the card to Kevin and Bean, and then greet the celebrity. So Ashley Judd, who was unknown at the time, and I remember being, who is this gorgeous woman?
Yeah.
Like she had one credit for a movie that hadn't come out yet. It was called
Yeah.
Heat, was the name of the movie.
Oh, yeah. Michael Mann. Yeah.
So, anyways, there's people that, some people you recognize, especially the ones that were in the movie. I got a message from one of my cousins back east. She's like, "Why did I see you on the E! Entertainment Channel holding hands with Nicole Kidman?" I'm like, well, all I was doing for those few seconds that
Yeah.
you saw was the entirety of my interaction with Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman. Is I'm telling her, you're going to be talking to Kevin and Bean, and you're going to walk up this riser. Here, I'll give you. Here's my. And I put out my hand, and she takes my hand and walks up the steps, and then hello everyone. And it's
Yeah.
one of these Batman movies because they had us do like anything Jim Carrey was in,
Oh, God.
and one of them I think was in Ace Ventura 2, and they ask us if we'll do it again, and everyone's like, "Oh, of course we'll do it." And the lady from Warner Brothers asked me about it. I'm like, November 8th? No, that's my daughter's 10th birthday. We're supposed to go to Chuck E. Cheese or something.
Oh.
And the lady says, "Well, I mean, how many kids are we talking about?" And I'm like, "That's probably like 8 or 10 kids." She's like, "Oh, that's nothing. I'll give you 8. Here's 8 tickets, 10 tickets." to the world premiere of Ace Ventura 2.
When nature calls, yeah.
And then we go to the after party, and I've got a picture of Jim Carrey with my 10-year-old birthday girl daughter.
Oh my God.
Yeah. At the after party, I'm like, yeah. So that was that worked out fine. And I have this beautiful leather jacket from Warner Brothers, which they didn't pay us to do any of these things.
Yeah.
But after we had done several of them, and they were big hit movies, this box shows up, and everyone on the Kevin and Bean show got these beautiful Warner Brothers leather jackets.
Nice.
So I still wear it to this day.
Are
So
there?
those are. Go ahead. I'm just going to keep going on celebrities.
No,
Please
I was
stop
going to
me.
say when it comes to celebrities, I'm trying to think how to form this question. I'm just going to say it. And
Yeah.
I assume you just took the route that I normally take when I meet somebody famous is they're just another schmuck. They're just another person. Like, it's amazing to me where I've been with people and we've met somebody and they're just like goo goo gone. I was like, you're just an idiot. Like, there's
I think it helps because I worked for,
yeah.
to me, enormously famous DJs.
Okay.
DJs
Okay.
that I'd listened to before I worked with them.
Yeah.
So I had to get over that starstruck business because I'm now seeing them at their worst.
Yeah.
And it's like a marriage. If you can handle me at my worst, then
Yeah.
you can deserve me at my best. So I've already heard them at their best, and now I'm seeing the flip side of it.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of idea of behind the scenes and backstage in radio then would apply when a famous celebrity, when
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze is hungover and head slumped on my desk, and we're trying to get him to get his act together and get into the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of the shock factor, the awe factor has worn off a little bit. And yeah, I'm sure there's somebody. I mean, if there are certain people who I would be excited about.
Yeah.
But I mentioned the comedian, the stars who recognize
Yeah.
the staff who
Yeah.
support me. So years later, I've moved to Knoxville, and I'm going to L.A. for an American Idol promotion with the Fox Network with one of the morning DJs from here in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know Kimmel, I'm asked for tickets to Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Yeah.
And we're going to get VIP tickets because I'm friends with Jimmy Kimmel.
And
So-
Bobcat
Well, I
directs
didn't. Of course, I forgot that, or I didn't. Somehow I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have that perception, or I knew it, but I didn't know it. Well, we go get in line at the stage door entrance, and there's Guillermo.
Yeah.
Is ready to check. He's literally doing security at the stage door to check us in.
That's amazing.
And I'm focused on that, and and we're in the line, and I'm with this other DJ from Knoxville, and I hear the omnipresent Frank,
Oh my
and it's Bobcat, who is now is much skinnier at this point in his life than
Yeah.
he had been. And I look around and I'm shocked. I'm like, who is that? But the voice, of course, gives it away. I'm
Yeah.
like, I know who it is. And I'm like, Bobcat, oh my gosh. He's like, yeah. And I was so stunned
Yeah.
because I wasn't expecting to see him
Yeah.
hanging out in the parking lot with Guillermo. It caught me off guard. Well, Bobcat then gets involved and makes sure that we get seats in the front row. He wants to make sure that we're seated where we will be on camera
Oh wow. Okay.
during the show,
That's amazing.
and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was one of the people who remembers me. Another one who would remember me from job to job and thing to thing was Brian Setzer
Oh yeah.
of the Stray Cats.
Yeah.
Or now he was promoting the Brian Setzer Orchestra.
Yeah.
So part of it was, they would show up at K-Rock with all of these people, and we'd be running microphones up and down the hall, and they would set up this band all in any nook and cranny of the room, and they couldn't all see each other, but we had to somehow it worked, and they played a song live on the air, and then a couple of years later, KLOS has finally caught up to that bandwagon. K-Rock did the swing music for a minute with
Yeah.
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and Cherry Poppin' Daddies and
When Swingers came out,
all
and
those
it-
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Brian Setzer, so they're on K-Rock first, and then KLOS puts Brian Setzer. I think we were going to have him play at the Christmas show or something, and he remembers me again. And at one time we're just driving through Burbank, and there's this hot rod car, like exactly what
Oh,
you would
yeah.
expect
Oh yeah.
Brian Setzer to be driving, and I'm in a minivan with my friends because we're going out to dinner with another couple. In their minivan, I'm sitting in the back, and I look over, and it's Brian Setzer. There's no window. He's in a convertible, and he's like, "Hey, Frank Murphy, how you doing?" And everyone in the car's like, "What just happened?" We just had a celebrity spotting, who turned the tables on us. That's not supposed to happen.
It's supposed to be the other way around. Yeah.
And then I really ticked off, twice I ticked off other DJs because of this. So I'm at the National Association of Broadcasters convention in downtown LA. I'm looking for a job. I think I was between jobs. And there's all the fancy, big time GMs and program directors are there. And Brian Setzer was going to be the headline entertainment. Well, it gets to the point where we're all supposed to go from the lobby where everyone's really doing their mingling and their networking.
Yeah.
But this event is going to be at a different ballroom upstairs. So everyone's got to crush into the elevators. So we're crushed into the elevators. And now Setzer has arrived, but they want to let him get up there first. So they're telling everyone, back up, clear a path, clear a path. Brian Setzer's coming through with his guitar case. Right, so they're pushing us all back. And Setzer's like, thank you. Oh, hey, Frank, how you doing? And he gets in the elevator.
Oh, my God.
So the same thing happened at a morning show DJ convention, a morning show boot camp convention, but it was a different celebrity. It was Donny Osmond.
Okay.
And I love Donny Osmond. He's just one of the most genuinely nice people. So
That's good.
years earlier, we at Wava played his song "Soldier of Love" as mystery artist because he couldn't get a hit.
I remember
get
that.
No radio airplay. So we're one of the stations. It was us and maybe Z100 in New York and a couple of others who took the risk and put on mystery artist, and it was "Soldier of Love," and everyone loves the song and it's a hit. And then we reveal that it's Donny Osmond. So Donny comes to town, and a week before, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile had been in town, and the bit was Frank's going to go. So I'm the producer, I'm the low man on the totem pole, but I would do bits that Don and Mike didn't want to do. I'd get in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile with a cell phone. I'd drive around D.C., drive around Georgetown, and I don't know what else to do. So I go. They ask if I can stand on the seat and pop out through the sunroof.
Yeah.
Who cares? Whatever. So I'm riding out through the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, chest high, with a old brick of a cell phone going, "I'm Frank Murphy in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Don't you wish you were me?" And it became a bit, right?
Yeah.
Don't you wish you were me? Well, when Donny Osmond comes to town, we decide, let's try to, the DJs say, get him to do that, but in the limo. So we take Donny Osmond in a limo, and he pops out through the sunroof, and he's on the cell phone going, "I'm Donny Osmond. Don't you wish you were me?" Oh,
my
so
God.
Obviously, it's a memorable bit. There's three people in the car, the driver, Donny Osmond, and me, and we're phoning it into the studio, and we're doing this stupid bit.
Yeah.
Well, he thought it was hilarious. And then none of the DJs wanted to go introduce his show at the, whatever, it was not I think the Bayou was the name of the theater in Georgetown, maybe, right? And my wife, who is 9 months pregnant, and she likes Donny Osmond. I'm like, well, nobody else at the station wants to do it.
Yeah.
So it's fallen down, morning show, other DJs, finally morning show producer. I'm going to do it. I'm going to walk out on stage.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Donny Osmond. I'm from WAVA, the station that plays Soldier of Love. Please welcome, and whatever the next song was by that point, please welcome Donny Osmond. So they're like, oh, well, you want to go backstage before you do it? We wait backstage here before you go on. And here's Donny, and he's like touching my wife's belly going, oh, this is great. I have kids. I'm so excited for you. So happy for you. So I feel like I made this connection with Donny Osmond. Morning show DJ convention in Atlanta. I think I was out of work again. I think I was down there looking for another job. And Donny Osmond comes in to promote $25,000 Pyramid. And to do it, they're going to select some of the local of these DJs to go play Pyramid as a promotion, but not everybody can do it. So he's picking business cards out of the fishbowl. It's JoJo from the JoJo and Smojo, whatever, these stupid DJ names, one after the other. Think of every dumbass DJ name you've ever heard, right? And then maybe a couple of normal names, whatever. It could be like Kevin Wright or whomever. Well, he pulls out and Frank Murphy. Frank Murphy's a very common name. There are dozens of Frank Murphys in the world, whether you think about a Supreme Court justice or an NFL football player or a guy in Ireland who paints Angus cattle, whatever. There's a lot of Frank Murphys in the world, but it's a common name. He fishes in the bowl and pulls out Frank Murphy's. Frank Murphy, wait a minute. Is this the Frank Murphy that I know? And I'm at the extreme other end of the ballroom. Like, hey, Donny. Hey. So every DJ is between Donny Osmond and me. I'm at the far back of the ballroom. And they all just turn around and look at me like, you. So I love those are my favorite celebrities, those three, because but in reality, I've met many, many more in different contexts, and it depends on the context. I can tell you Rick Springfield is great because for whatever reason they needed a local DJ to facilitate the Q&A. He did a show at the Tennessee Theater, and it was between me and a lady at B97 who's a huge Rick Springfield fan, right?
Was it Val?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But our station is like, they were being competitive. Bruce Patrick, our promotions director, was competitive, and he knew that if I said no, that Val was going to get it. But we had a chance because we played more Rick Springfield songs than they did. It's just a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
He's an oldies act. But it's a Tuesday night. I'm like, oh, man, I got my comedy show on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, really, this is important to us. Please skip the comedy show that night and go facilitate the Rick Springfield Q&A.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, sure. So I go in to do it, and Rick is just charming and delightful, and it goes well. And then you get that nice compliment from, I guess not everybody gets this compliment, I guess, but I've gotten it multiple times from somebody in the bit, whether it's Dennis DeYoung or whether it's Rick Springfield's manager, complimenting me because I'm not like all the other stupid DJs they have to deal with in every other city. They're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Dennis DeYoung at the Secret City Festival is like, look, I'm not going to walk out there if you do this, this, or this. I'm like, no, I get it. He's looking at me like,
oh my God, I was at that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dennis DeYoung, a great show.
Yeah.
So Dennis DeYoung is telling me,
he was funny.
He's like, and the management told me this too. He says, if you don't, maybe that's what it was. I was talking to the management. He said, if you don't do it the way we're asking you to do it, Dennis will deliberately wait off stage to make you look foolish. Because DJs love to go, and now here he is, Dennis DeYoung.
Yeah.
And he won't walk out. He won't do it. That's not the instructions. You're not introducing the act in this instance. It's called fronting the show.
Okay.
And the big difference between fronting the show and introducing the act. Now, that sounds, who cares, right? Those little words. But when you know the words, when they're telling you, all right, here's what we're going to do. So I say to them, so you just want me to front the show, not intro the act. And then there's like this pause.
Yeah.
And this little gleam in their eye. And they're like, yeah, that's right. So you go out there and you follow instructions and you say, we're excited that Dennis DeYoung is going to be here. We love these songs. Get psyched because we are ready. Stand by because coming up is going to be the Dennis DeYoung at the Secret City Festival. Who's excited?
Yeah.
And you walk off. So I haven't introduced Dennis DeYoung. I've said that he's coming up after his intro music in effect.
Yeah.
Right? So I walk past Dennis DeYoung. He smiles, and I get the thumbs up, and he walks right out on stage.
Oh,
So the opposite of what they told me, if you screw this up. So obviously I didn't, say, but it's not that hard.
No.
And the same thing with the Rick Springfield people. They're like, hey, man, thanks. You made it easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't go well because the DJ is too egotistical or thinks they are the act.
Right.
And I've seen this with DJs I worked for where they would get out there and try to do material, and they're not stand-up comedians.
Yeah.
They're radio comedians, and it doesn't translate on stage, and they bomb, and now whoever they're opening for, whether it's a musician or a comedian, is like, I don't want to follow that.
Yeah. And
then Mark and Brian at KLOS, they had such egos on them. They would only introduce a show if they could say, and now here is 38 Special, and then the drummer had to be in place, and the drummer had to hit the first beat before, or Mark and Brian wouldn't do it.
Good Lord.
And they were big enough that some bands would concede to them.
Yeah.
But I've seen all of this now in my producer career, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be like him, and I don't want to be like them, and I don't want to be like them. So that's part of my modus operandi when I'm doing these things with celebrities. Like, well, I'm not going to act like those two, and I'm just going to be the opposite. I'm going to be the opposite of these DJs I've worked with, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
And it goes great.
So is there anybody you could meet that it would still give you the tingles? Like it would still freak you out like a little bit? I have two, and I'm curious if you've met. I think you've met one of them. But
I think,
they're both L.A. people. So
I think Steve Martin and Jerry Seinfeld, who are both coincidentally coming to Knoxville soon, would be big deals for me because I was especially Steve Martin, I was a fan of him when he was wearing the white suit and the arrow through his head.
Yeah.
That might be but he's also, I've watched enough of him, and he just seems so nice and so comfortable. And Seinfeld, you get this mistaken impression by watching comedians in cars with coffee that he'd be very calm and relaxed. But also, there's no way Jerry Seinfeld's going to do an interview with a local DJ in Knoxville. He doesn't even have to do the show. He walks out on stage and says, "Y'all know I'm rich, right?
Yeah.
Y'all know that I don't need to be here doing this, right? But I'm here because I want to do it, and let's go on with the show from this point forward." Yeah. So
Okay.
who are your two?
There are two, and I always say if I ever met them, I would just walk up to them and say, I'm going to hug you and I'm going to cry. And that's what's going to happen. And I think they would have two disparate. I think one of them would be like, "Bring it in, big man," and the other one would be like, "Security."
Now, I did meet Betty White, if she's one of them.
No.
Okay.
They're both still alive. Magic Johnson
Nice.
and Kevin Smith. That's the one I think you may have met.
Actually, it's the opposite. I met Magic.
Really?
Yeah. I was consulting a George Lopez radio show for a couple of years.
Okay.
And, Magic came by the studio.
For some reason, I thought Kevin was on Kevin and Bean.
He was, but after I was gone.
Oh, okay.
So when I left, they got another different producer. Ultimately, Jimmy Kimmel left as the writer and was
Yeah.
replaced by Ralph Garman.
Yes.
Who is the guy
The
who
Ralph
does
Report.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the Kevin Smith podcast.
Yes. Hollywood Babylon. I love
Yeah.
Ralph. Yeah.
So I think if anything, Kevin Smith may have come by for an interview, but
that's
I really
where
don't.
that's where they met because they've talked about that.
Yeah,
So you
I
have
don't know
met
that he had
Magic.
something. Yeah, I mean, because he was a celebrity who came
Yeah.
by the radio station, and everybody got to shake his hand and say, "Hi,
Yeah.
Magic Johnson."
Those are the two. I think Magic
That's
Johnson
impressive.
would be like, "Bring it in." I think Kevin Smith would be
Yeah.
a little weirded out by that.
Yeah, I remember Magic. Just everything about him was so inviting. It's just his smile and his personality and the way his eyes sparkled. Because he's just, "Hey, people, I like people."
Yeah. So I was in Atlanta at, I don't know how much you follow sports. Cam Newton. Do you know who Cam Newton is? Quarterback.
Yeah, he was a quarterback.
Yeah. So
I used to follow sports heavily
Okay.
to the point where I realized I don't have that much time left.
Okay.
I need to start living like I'm dying over here. Yeah.
So Cam Newton has a cigar shop in Atlanta, and a friend drove up from St. Augustine, Florida, and I drove down from Knoxville, and the whole point was to go to this cigar shop.
Nice.
So we go in there, and it's like 5:00 in the afternoon, and we sit down, and we're both in like sport coat. I'm not a sport coat person. I'm in a sport coat, nice shirt, tucked in, black jeans.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're sitting there, and we're smoking cigars, and we're drinking, and all of a sudden, the way I'm sitting here, my buddy's sitting there at a table. There's stairs that go up to VIP that form an L.
Sure.
And from behind that L, this large man walks in, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "That's Charles Barkley."
Oh,
Like that.
wow.
And behind him walks his agent or manager, who's like a 6'2" woman. And I was like, "Good Lord!" I was like, "She's giant too." And I was like, "That's," and he's like, "That's not Charles." Holy shit, that's Charles Barkley.
Nice. Yeah,
And so
yeah.
they sit down like 2 tables over from us, and then Charles he goes to go get a cigar in the humidor, and the humidor's tiny. So my buddy's like, starts smacking the table. "You have to go meet Charles Barkley.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to go meet Charles Barkley." I was like, "All right." So I get up and I open the door of the humidor, and he turns around, and I'm 2 inches taller than him.
No way.
So he turns around and he goes, "How's it going, Dave, big man?" And I was like, "It's going good. It's going good." And he's like, "Good to hear. Good to hear." And the guy's talking to me. He's like, "I'll be with you in a minute." And he's talking to him about a cigar. And I was like, "If you're looking for a good cigar, I smoked this one earlier. It's really good, man." And he was like, "Oh, which one is that?" And I
he's
brought him
interested.
over and showed it to him. And that
Nice.
guy was almost like, I thought he was going to say, "You need a fucking leave." Because it was just like, the
You're
guy
doing his
was
job.
so tense. I want to go,
What do
when
you
am I
call-
ever going to meet Charles Barkley? Like, this is insane.
What do you call that? A sommelier is wine, a barista is coffee. What is a cigar aficionado?
I don't know.
Oh.
A
A cigar.
douchebag.
Because humidor, if the name of the job is also humidor, that would be funny.
So I have 3
Hello,
humidors right there.
I'm the humidor, and I work inside the humidor.
So he gets his cigar, and when he leaves, he like pats me on the shoulder. He's like,
Sweet.
"Good looking out, big guy," or something like
Yeah.
that, or "I have a good one." And he leaves, and so and the guy is angry that he has to deal with me. So I buy 2 more cigars, and we walk out. And at that moment, Charles and his manager are being escorted up to VIP.
VIP.
And my buddy is just sitting there, and he's in tech, and he's like, "How much money am I willing to spend to get us to VIP? And I can just see it running in his head of like, how much, what can I do to get us up to VIP? I was like, dude, I think they ushered him up there because I went in there. I was like, dude. And so we're
trying to
sitting
get
there,
away from you.
we're hanging out. At one point, this older, he was in his 60s, gentleman walks up, Natalie dressed. It's starting to fill up a little bit, and he introduced himself. He starts talking to us. It's Cam Newton's uncle,
Nice.
who runs the place, and he's talking to us, and we're just jibber jabbering, and he like hangs out for like 20, 30 minutes just talking to us. And I think it's because as we figured out as the night wore on, we were the only two white dudes. We were only two white people in there, which is totally fine. I grew up in East Knoxville. I went to Fulton.
I mean, I've been in that
yeah,
scenario.
it's never
Took
an
my wife
issue.
to see the movie Kings of Comedy,
Oh.
and we're looking around going, okay, I guess we're
So I went to
unusual
see
here.
I went to see Chris Rock at the Tennessee Theater in 1996.
Yeah, same
There
thing.
were some rich white people down front, and there was a black man in front of me with a white girlfriend, and the two black women behind me kept giving that dude shit about dating a white woman, to where my buddy Robbie and I were sitting there and was like, yeah, why would you date a white woman? Like, we're jumping in. So anyway, so we're sitting there talking, and it's filling up, and all of a sudden, here comes Cam Newton. And he
Nice.
starts going up the stairs, and he gets to the break in the L, and then he leans back and he looks at me and he does the head nod. I was like, he's probably looking at me going, is that an offensive lineman? No. Like, who are these two
I
guys?
see, yeah.
Like-
No, I know what you mean.
And then he goes on upstairs, and it hits a point to where they're like, the manager comes over and is like, we're going to need this table. And I was like, oh, yeah, we've been here since 5 o'clock. It's like 10:30 and it's getting jam-packed.
You've had
in
the
here.
the
Yeah.
encounter with Cam
Yeah,
Newton.
and
that
so
you
we're like,
came
yeah.
for.
And the waitress came up. She's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, we've been here for like 6 hours. We're good.
Yeah.
And we've had 2 cigars each, and we're on our third one. We're good.
Nice.
And so as I get up, my buddy goes out ahead of me. And then as I'm going to leave, there's Cam Newton's uncle. And he turns around and sees
Here's
me.
your chance. Here's your chance.
No, he goes, where are you going? And I was like, well, they asked us. He's like, who asked you to leave? Like, he starts going. He's like, it's my birthday. You gotta hang out with me on my birthday, man. And he just keeps trying to get me to stay, but my friend is gone. And so I was like, had my friend still been there, we would have been like, can we go to VIP?
Partying with Cam Newton.
Yeah,
Come on.
and Charles Barkley, because we never saw him come down. That was the one exit.
He's still there to this day.
He's still there to this day. But we're sitting there, and his uncle will not let me leave. And my buddy is outside scared shitless. He was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if Jody punched somebody. Like, and when we leave, we get in the car, and we both freaked out a little bit. Just like, that was amazing. Like, holy. Like, but it's.
So we used to have a lot of the Washington Redskins players on.
Oh, yeah.
At Wava. So this would have been mostly in the 80s. So as
Okay.
you can imagine, they were Super Bowl champions.
Doug Johnson.
Doug Williams, maybe.
Doug Williams. Not Doug Johnson.
Yeah,
Doug-
Doug Williams. The year that he won the Super Bowl, is Bean and I went to the White House for the award for the thing where they give
Yeah.
the president a game ball or a jersey
Yeah.
or whatever, and we're broadcasting live from the lawn of the White House in this kind of jury-rigged scenario where we've got these regular wireless mics like from a stage, and our engineer is on the roof of the JW Marriott Hotel, so there's line of sight. It's pretty distant, but we can be heard. And Bean and I didn't know what to do when Ronald Reagan has a football, and one of the players, I think it was Ricky Sanders, jumps off the stage and starts running across the lawn. And Reagan, it's all prepared, but Reagan drops back and tosses him the ball. And Bean and I just fall into play-by-play. Reagan drops back to pass. Ricky Sanders cuts across, and it's complete. You know?
Oh, my
But we're
God.
just screwing around thinking it's
Yeah.
funny, right? But
Yeah.
all these other news guys are like pointing at us and going, ah.
That's all.
And that was the time that I think they beat the Denver Broncos because
Yeah.
on my hat, then the picture says Denver sucks. But they wouldn't let us say the word sucks on the radio. So my solution for Don and Mike is, here's what we're going to do. Anytime we want to say Denver sucks, instead, which they will not let us say,
Yeah.
we will say Denver draws liquid into their mouths by creating a partial vacuum of their lips, cheek, and tongue. And it became because
Yeah.
it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's a typical morning radio thing.
Of what
but
you
people
can't do,
loved
yeah.
it and they embraced it. But we would have, you'd have somebody on the payroll, every station practically had somebody on the payroll for the weekly Redskins report. So
Okay.
we had Joe Jacoby one year. We had Dexter Manley one year.
Oh.
We had sportscaster George Michael who was
Oh,
a
yeah.
famous top
Oh, yeah.
40 DJ, and I loved George Michael because
Oh,
he
yeah.
would come in. Like once a year, he'd come in and DJ songs, but he doesn't know how to run his own board, so I'd have to run it for him.
He had like a late night show in
Yep,
syndication.
Sports Machine. George Michael,
Yeah,
Sports
I would
Machine.
watch that.
Yeah, so I loved George Michael,
Yeah.
and Mark Rippon was another one.
Oh yeah.
And Rip was, and my job would be to call these guys, wake them up, and
Yeah.
tell them we're going to be calling you back on the air in 5, 10, whatever minutes. And then after I moved to L.A., I got tickets to the Redskins L.A. Rams game. It was
Yeah.
the first time the Rams were there.
Yeah.
And we had got tickets through the sports station, the DC sports station that broadcast the Redskins. So we're sitting basically in the wives and girlfriends section, which also happened one time when we went to a Chicago Cubs New York Mets game by getting the tickets through the New York Mets broadcaster in Wrigley Field in Chicago.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the wives and girlfriends section. Well, anyway, the players are coming off the field. The Redskins we're lost by a tiny fraction, and so we're all dejected. But I'm there with my wife and kids, and Mark Rippon looks up and goes, "Hey, Frank, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm here with my wife and kids." So that those guys, some of those Redskins players were always so. I mean, to them, it's funny. We're almost celebrities to them because who do
Right.
they listen to on their way to practice?
Right.
Somebody. They listen to someone of the local stations. Yeah.
So we've been talking around all this all the time. What brought you to Knoxville, and had you been here before?
No, I had not.
Okay.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I hadn't thought about Knoxville. In fact, I should have been here for the 1982 World's Fair. I have no excuse, really, except that I had just started working at a bankrupt AM radio station in Herndon, Virginia, and I was so excited to finally to be on the air and playing, all these brand new songs like Joan Jett and Betty Dick and Kim Carnes and all these other songs
Yeah.
that I had blinders on. I wasn't even aware, didn't even think about the 1982 World's Fair. And, I got a call from this DJ company in Sterling, Virginia saying, "Hey, we've heard you on the air." And I'm not getting paid to do the radio show. I'm completely volunteer and making mistakes, but I'm learning my way. And this guy calls up and says, "Hey, do you want to make some extra money?" I'm like, "Well, you can leave out the word extra, but you can make some money DJing parties and wedding receptions." So I'll go to work for this mobile DJ company. And if you've ever heard comedian Patton Oswalt, or if you're a fan of comedian Patton Oswalt,
I was going to bring that up because I've heard him talk about Sterling, Virginia.
It's the same company.
Oh, is it really?
I worked for the same company that Patton Oswalt worked for, and he's got this riff on how we played everything off of cassette, and how the songs some of the cassettes were stretched out sometimes.
Yeah.
Now we did not, we were not there at the same time. He's younger than me, and he was there after me, but it's the same bit,
Yeah.
same company. And then he grew up listening to Don and Mike. And by the time he became famous, I had already moved away. But he would be a frequent guest on Don and Mike's show because that was his hometown show. That's the guys he listened to growing up.
That's
So
funny.
that's kind of interesting. So in fact, the only time I really met Patton Oswalt was, remember I told you how I sat in the front row at Jimmy Kimmel
Yeah.
Live years later? The guest that night was Patton Oswalt.
That's amazing.
And during the commercial, they're doing some bit where they're throwing, not kind of like axe throwing, but whatever it is they were doing. They were doing some bit that was happening over in our section of the audience. So they're milling about, and I get to say hi to Patton Oswalt, say, "Hey, I used to work with Don and Mike, and I was worked for that mobile DJ company." He's like, "No way, that's amazing, that's great." That's my minuscule celebrity encounter with Patton Oswalt.
When you said Sterling, because I remember him saying Sterling, Virginia, where he was talking about some local guy that was the guy on the TV that would talk about local events.
Yeah.
And he was like, all these great events were happening, but he was talking about Minnie's Harvest Fest or something over here. He was like, what the hell? He's like, we've got all this punk music happening right next door. And you were talking about, well, I went to Minnie's Harvest or whatever it was. But I remember Sterling, Virginia. Him and Lewis Black talking about Silver Spring, Maryland.
Yes.
Those are the two that whenever I think about the D.C. area, I think about those two guys.
My big break into radio was I worked at that bankrupt station, which then made me the most likely candidate to become station manager of the college radio station.
Okay.
Because I had commercial radio experience, and I treated it like it was a big-time top 40 station and pretended, that we had listeners. So we did a promotion, a contest at the annual festival. The George Mason University would have a fall festival called Patriot Day and a spring festival called Mason Day.
Okay.
So we thought, well, let's have a dance contest at the fall festival. And because right now, I mean, Michael Jackson's Thriller was huge, and all these other, top 40 was making a resurgence. So we had to set up a stage, or there was a stage set up, and we had people come out and dance, and we had a winner, and it helped us get some publicity. In the spring, we would do. Someone decided, or someone suggested that we do like an air guitar contest, because there was an article in the New York Times saying that air guitar was popular at Yale, or some idiotic thing like that, or
God.
Harvard or
Okay.
something. But I got someone gave me the article. I'm like, well, we can do that, but we could. I'm talking around. One of the guys on our staff was a drummer. He's like, well, that sucks. So we made it an air band contest.
Okay.
So you'd come out, and really what ended up happening is people came out and basically recreated music videos. They dressed up as Van Halen or dressed up as In Vogue, whoever.
Yeah.
Anyway, and they did, or maybe it was Vanity Six, whatever it was. There's a bunch of girls in negligees came out, and a bunch
As
of guys in
Vanity Six.
spandex, and they all did bits. They did these songs. Well, I needed to get some celebrity judges for this
Yeah.
college contest at this tiny little AM radio station that no one listened to at this crowded festival with 5,000 kids, right? So I contacted all the local TV stations, and 2 of the reporters said yes, they'd come, the feature reporters.
Yeah.
So from the CBS station, there was this crime reporter named Mike Buchanan who would do the hardcore grisly murder crimes, but he also then occasionally would do the wacky soft feature.
Yeah.
And it was just an odd dichotomy. So he was going to come, and he ended up bringing a camera crew and putting it on the news. Then from the NBC station, this reporter named Steve Ducey, who was the wacky feature reporter,
Steve Ducey.
and he was kind of new to town from Kansas, and he was still kind of young. So he came and also puts it on the news. So if you were watching the news that night, whether you were watching the CBS or the NBC affiliate at 5:50 p.m.
Yeah.
or 6:50 p.m., and now another lighter side before we go to network news. Here's Mike Buchanan, here's Steve Ducey with what those crazy college kids are up to out at George Mason University.
Oh my
And
God.
it was our contest. So the next week, there's a phone message on our answering machine at the college radio station, because these guys did a good job of conveying the fact that this was sponsored by WGMU Radio.
Yeah.
I got a phone call from the mighty WAVA asking if I would please contact them about this airband contest that I did. And I call her up, and she's like, hey, we saw that on the news. We're trying to do something similar. Would you be willing to give us your list of contestants so that we can have a successful airband contest also? And like any smart person in the world, I said, no,
Yeah.
of course not.
No.
I said, but however, I'd love to come down and talk to you about it. I'm interested in an internship. Well, I don't know if we do that. I said, okay, but I'll let you know. And then anyways, next thing you know, I've got an interview down here. Now, meanwhile, the ABC radio station Q107 WRQX Washington was very formal and had a multi-page application for interns, and a lot of people in my class had been through the intern program there, and it was good, but it was organized, and it was a deadline, and you had to like fill out the essay questions and this college application. It was like a college app practically,
Yeah.
right? And I had started on it, but I was so busy doing the airband contest that I didn't finish it, and it's like the deadline is right on us, or I might have even missed the deadline. I don't even know. So I go down, and I just talk my way through this interview down here at WAVA saying, well, I'll be happy to, come on board as an intern and get college credit, and so all you'd have to do would be fill out a couple of pieces of paperwork for George Mason, and I can certainly assist you with I do the interview, and of course they say they're desperate. It turns out I didn't know this, but they were desperate because Budweiser had signed on to sponsor this airband contest. WAVA had only switched formats to Top 40 6 months earlier, and Q107 is beating the pants off them, so Budweiser's about to pull the promotion because they did the contest and nobody showed up, or barely anybody showed up the first week. So I'm like, okay, well, I got contestants, and I'll call them and they'll show, and but we need an audience also. So I'm like, okay. So I called kids around college, get them to come, and then I called where I used to work at Wolf Trap Farm Park for the Performing Arts. I say, hey, why don't y'all come out Wednesday night? We're going to be at the Wax Museum, which used to be a wax museum, but now it's a bar called the Wax Museum. It still has some wax fingers hanging above the bar. And we're going to have this contest, airband contest. Bring the new people. Okay. So anyway, next thing you know, I've got the Budweiser's happy because there's a bunch of college-age kids filling this bar, watching other college-age kids singing along. And I think the drinking age must have been, maybe it was still 18 back then.
18.
Yeah, I guess because we sold beer at Mason Day, so it certainly made sense. And that's how I met my wife.
Wow.
She was one of the new people working at Wolf Trap, and she shows up with some people that I already knew, and here we are under the Neil Armstrong, or over and the Abe Lincoln looking at us. And I met her. I didn't date her right away because my stupid friend Bruce asked her out before I did, but technically that's how we met.
That's awesome.
So then, you didn't see that coming, did you?
Under the Neil Armstrong, though. That needs to be an album title or something.
Well, I am trying to write a book, but I've decided that in searching for a title for the book, I actually decided I just want to call it the Frank and Friends book because I've already got this great logo. I mean, I want to talk to you about this. I need to get the word. I don't know how to make it say, because that's what ultimately the book is about. It's about me telling these same kind of stories.
Yeah.
And I've written 40,000 words so far. I've got to get to like 78,000, I think is what they said to make it a book, according to Google research.
Yeah.
So I talked to my wife about it. She's like, "Why don't you've got the best logo ever?
Oh,
why can't that just be the book cover?
Appreciate it.
And it can be the Frank and Friends." I said, "Jody Collins designed it. I'll have to just ask him.
Yeah.
I'll put him on the spot and
Yeah,
see
I
if there's
can
a way to make
reformat
that
it.
the book cover somehow, or use that same thing, but instead of show, say book.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be it, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just gave away the
Okay.
idea, but
Okay. Can do.
but the book's half done.
Okay. Well, now
Half
you're
written.
in my queue now.
All right,
already. See
All
on
right.
the Knoxville.
Knoxville, yes, I am in Knoxville.
Had
So how did I get here?
yeah.
I had a series of other failed jobs in Los Angeles. So I had the 3 successful jobs that everyone talks about. Jay Thomas, Power 106, Kevin and Bean, KROQ, Mark and Brian, KLOS. Well, at Mark and Brian, I would get fed up. Every one of these jobs, after about 3 years of Kevin and Bean and 3 years of Mark and Brian, I'm like, I can't produce shows anymore. And we did so many great things at KLOS. We produced these amazing live radio shows of War of the Worlds, Christmas Carol, Wizard of Oz, and it was very gratifying, but to a certain degree, the regular day-to-day humdrum of trying to book guests for them to talk to every day,
Yeah.
5 days a week. They wanted a major A-list celebrity, and it takes so much longer to book a guest than it does to do the interview.
Right.
So I'm burned out, and the former program director has gone to this little rinky-dink station in Altadena called Y107, and he promises me that I can be the morning show co-host if I'll quit Mark and Brian and come work at this smaller company, smaller station, trying to compete with K-Rock. Well, I do it. It turns out I was misled in multiple ways.
Of course.
That the other DJ thought I was going to be his producer because I'm well known as a radio producer. Why would he be a co-host? He's never been a co-host.
Yeah.
All these other things. The station ultimately went down the tube. That guy, the program director who hired me, got fired pretty quickly. Everything kind of went down the tubes pretty fast, and it went Spanish because that's, I think, where ultimately they were headed, was to just try to make us miserable, get us to quit or fired so they could go Spanish. So I'm out of work in L.A. I worked at an internet radio station in the year 2000 that had live streaming video, live streaming audio, podcasts, chat rooms,
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that you would think is common now.
Yeah.
But it was the year 2000.
Yeah.
In the year 2000.
Yeah. I can't hear that without hearing that. Yeah.
So we were too far ahead of our time. The venture capitalists invested in the company, but the San Francisco side of the company, the tech side, spent it all on fancy Herman
course.
Mueller Aeron chairs by
Oh,
Herman
yeah.
Mueller, and they
Herman
had-
Miller.
Herman Miller. They had these expensive offices.
Oh yeah.
That,
The ping pong tables and the
yeah, and we were supposed to get all of that, right?
Yeah.
They did give us a foosball table, but we're working in a barn of an empty special effects studio in Marina Del Rey with leftovers, hand-me-down furniture from the Salvation Army. They put in construction trailers for our studios inside this warehouse. Everything's second rate. And when this company started to go bankrupt and they closed the San Francisco office, they sent us like all this nice furniture, and we're like, and then the company went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And we had to sue to get our last paycheck. But there were all these big name comedians. It was called Comedy World Radio Network. So I met a bunch of great comedians, and I'm working with them side by side as a producer. And they gave me a weekend show that nobody else wanted, the Saturday morning time slot. So I took it. And I'm hooked now. I don't ever want to produce anymore. I want to just be on the
Yeah.
air. Well, I'm out of work again when that place goes bankrupt. But this consultant named Randy Lane, who was from Memphis, and he used to program Q107 WRQX Washington. So he was aware of who I was because I worked for the competition now this station had become big and was now beating Q107.
Okay.
So it was a battle, classic top 40 battle. They'd win one quarter, we'd win the next quarter. So he was aware of who I was because our morning show had higher ratings than his morning show. He moved out to L.A., and worked at a light rock station called Star 98.7. He was friends with Jimmy Kimmel, and actually I met him through Jimmy. So I got to meet Randy Lane. He's a delightful man. I think he's terrific. When I'm out of work, he said, hey, do you want to come talk to this convention, morning show convention that I'm putting together? I'm doing a seminar for my clients up in Napa. I'll take you and your wife up to Napa for the weekend, put you up at a bed and breakfast, and all you got to do is give your presentation about how to put together a morning show to this bunch of yahoos at the conference center. I'm like, yeah. So I had street cred as knowing how to do morning shows.
Right.
And I was telling him I got to get back on the air. I got to do this, that, and the other thing. And he's the one who was the client of his. I guess he wasn't the client. 100.3 The River, WOKI, was his client in Knoxville. He had clients around a lot in the South, but that one specifically. He's like, what do you think about Knoxville? Like, I don't know. Let me Google that.
It's like,
I don't mean to sound
UT football
rude. Yeah.
and Sunsphere.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds terrible because I love Knoxville and I'm planning on living and dying here. I want to be buried here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I love it here, but I don't remember what I knew about Knoxville before because everything after it became so rich and so full that I'm blinded to whatever I thought before. Obviously, I Googled it. Obviously, I figured all this some things out. I didn't Google. I didn't have Google. It would have been Yahoo did.
Yahoo or AOL had a search engine.
Dogpile, I had a search engine.
It's weird because growing up here, we were always a college town. And I feel like there's a time in like 2010, 2012 where that has been less of the focus.
Yeah, we're more of a tourist foodie town now.
Yes.
We're a tourist town and a foodie town and a whatever else town you want to be.
Outdoorsy town.
Outdoorsy town, right.
Yeah.
And that's all due to the people at Visit Knoxville.
Yeah.
They have done a great job of conveying that image. And also, it doesn't hurt that all those chefs from Blackberry Farm decided to not go to Chicago and to open up a restaurant here.
Yeah.
That used to be the thing, is you'd make your name at Blackberry Farm, and then you'd go to New York or Chicago or L.A.
Yeah.
And once enough of those guys stayed close,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden we're a restaurant town.
Yeah.
You know, and that's great. Anyway.
Okay, so you didn't know much about it.
I don't remember what I knew about it, but I researched it, and including looking up comedy improv to the point where, as I had taken a class during this fallow period, or while I was working at Comedy World, I guess, I was now really interested in comedy. And I worked for a comedian. I produced a comedian named Alan Havey. I produced his talk show during the week, and then I did my own talk show on the weekends. And I remember him being so pissed that Billy Bob Thornton called into my show and not his, and passed the phone to Angelina Jolie. Hey Angie, this is my friend Frank Murphy. He used to work on Mark and Brian. Billy Bob is one of those guys who would know me.
Oh.
Because there's a long story about how Billy Bob and Mark and Brian were friends and how we helped promote Sling Blade.
Yeah.
When the movie company was asking me, we were trying to do an Oscar, for your consideration campaign. We did a special screening of Sling Blade, like for the industry and
That's amazing.
for fans.
Yeah.
And then we said to Billy Bob, when you win the Oscar, you got to come by. He's like, yeah, if. Well, anyway, the morning he wins the night after he wins the Academy Awards, he shows up at 6 a.m. still awake in his tuxedo holding that Oscar.
That's
He kept his
amazing.
word. He was very close to the show and very great guy. Well, anyway, so I'm working on Alan Havey's show, and all he did was bash improv and prop comics. He hated prop comics and he hated improvisers, because he had an act.
Yeah.
I actually went to see his act in Vegas while I was in town. He's good, great comedian. But boy, did he hate prop comics, and boy, did he hate improv. And I remember on the Mark and Brian show, Brian would take improv classes and talk about how important it was to him. And there's something about, and I loved Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
And I wanted to take an improv class at the Groundlings or where Corolla came from, the Acme Comedy work theater in North Hollywood or any of these places, but I was too cheap and too afraid. And when the city of Burbank Parks and Rec offered improv ages 13 and up for $10,
13 and up.
I should mention that I was 39 at the time. But so I took the class, and I like a fish to water, you know?
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this sooner? I'm an idiot. I feel like it's like that feeling of when you go on stage or when you go on mic or when you go on camera. It's like someone has taken their foot off your air hose.
Yeah.
And you feel, this is where I belong.
Yeah.
I feel calm. I feel normal here. And then when I go back to my regular life, it's like somebody's got their foot back on my air hose while I'm trying to breathe. I love it. So
Yeah.
I fell in love with improv, and I started reading about it and studying it. So now I'm coming to Knoxville, Tennessee for a job. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if they don't have improv? But thankfully, it was a college town. Every college town is improv. So I look up and see that there's a troupe that's been around since 1994. And at this point, it's 2002. You know, they've been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
And they still perform every Tuesday night. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm flying in on a Tuesday afternoon. My on-air interview with Phil is Wednesday morning
Yeah.
of Holy Week, and then Thursday morning, or Maundy Thursday, Holy Thursday, whatever you call it. Those are my 2 on-air audition days with Phil, and then I'll fly home to spend Easter with my family. But Tuesday night, I can go. I can go see this show.
You can explore this old city.
Yeah, and they put me up in the whatever the hotel on top of Summit Hill was called at the time.
Oh, yeah.
What's it called now? Crown Plaza?
Yeah. Yeah. Crown
Or-
Plaza.
Whatever, it was like a Radisson?
I think it was Radisson.
It's been multiple things. I think
yeah.
it was that day. I think it was Radisson.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find my way to the old city. And I'm pretty sure I took a ride from a stranger. I know I took a ride from a stranger either to get there or to get back. Oh my God. And this is the weird thing about my life, is that strangers approach me everywhere I go. So here I am. I'm walking down the sidewalk, and some guy pulls up and says, "Hey, can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying to find this old Patrick Sullivan." Or it was actually Manhattan's. The old city,
Yeah.
Jackson and Central. I hop in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I took, and it just this is the story of my life. I can't stop for direction. Excuse me. I can't stop at a traffic light sometimes without somebody looking at me going, "Hey," and I think I'm being recognized, right?
Yeah.
No. Can you tell me how to get to Weisgarber? Like, yeah, sure. You go that way. So it's not uncommon for me to have these weird interactions with strangers.
Yeah.
I go see Einstein Simplified at Manhattan's. I'm like, oh, this is great. If I move here, I can come become a fan and watch them regularly. I move here I get the job with Phil. I do the on-air audition. I fill my mouth with marshmallow peeps because I think that's going to be funny. I'd kind of done this. I took some of the stuff I did at Comedy World and did it with Phil. It's like, this guy's crazy. Let's do this. We interviewed a guy named Death Pool Dave, who would bet money on celebrity deaths and win lots of money.
Oh,
betting
okay.
correctly on celebrity deaths. I think we also interviewed a guy from Celebrity Death Beeper, who will send send you a text anytime a celebrity died.
A text.
Yeah. And in fact, if you go to his website and you scroll back far enough to 2001, he's got this archives of every interview he's ever done. And it's like, huge thanks to Frank Murphy for my first radio interview.
That's amazing. Oh, my God.
And he's got the audio of it on there, of me in 2001 interviewing this guy about his death beeper. Well, anyway, so we do some of these bits on my audition. They think I'm weird and crazy enough. Great. I get hired. Now I'm going to move my family back east because we lived in Virginia and then moved to California. We've been out there for 10 years. Going to now move to Tennessee. And
your wife's like, "We're moving where?"
Well, she thought it was good because it was
good.
closer to Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
When we lived in California, we were an island. We had no relatives nearby.
Yeah.
Occasionally, someone would come visit us, but we made good friends through. My wife would volunteer at the kids' school. We made other parents.
Yeah.
Parents of our kids' friends became our best friends.
Yeah.
And we had very close friends there who would invite us for Easter and Christmas and things like that. But we had no family. But it did great for us as a family because it threw us into our own traditions. Instead of always going to my mother-in-law's house for everything,
Yeah.
we became a tighter family unit ourselves because we had to fend for ourselves.
Right.
And so moving to Tennessee didn't seem that unusual or exotic. In fact, I had deja vu in the sense that when I moved from the New York suburbs, which I remember I thought the houses were far apart.
Yeah.
If you remember, go back about 3 hours in this conversation. I was talking about how far apart I thought the houses were in my old neighborhood. Then we moved to Northern Virginia, and we're living in a town called Oakton, which is not right now. I mean, it's expensive real estate, and it's different. And then they had mailboxes on the side of the road. You had to put the flag up. You had to walk out to the road to get your mail. I'm like, what? No. Why doesn't the mailman just put it in a little box on the side of your front door, like in New York?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a big adjustment in 1980 to move from New York to Virginia. So in 1992, moving from Burbank to Knoxville, like, this is comfortable. I feel like I've done this before in my life.
Okay.
It reminded me of Northern Virginia, and the town's growing. Things are happening, and I'm still in a fairly suburban neighborhood over there in 3792 Far. I get the job. They're like, you're from California. You need to move. You need to live out west. You can't live. You're not going to be able to handle North or South Knoxville. I'm like, I'd be fine. I'm like, I think I'd be fine. No. You need to live out west. So they all made me live out west, and I'm delighted. I've been there 20 years.
The last time I worked at the paper, there were two sales guys, and one of them went to Jackie's when she was at the old location on McCullough, and then that guy Gerald, he had went with me, and then another guy, I can't remember his name.
I think I've met Gerald.
Gerald's very boisterous.
Yeah, I met him at some charity event.
Gerald's awesome. Gerald's a hoot. I always say Gerald is the person that, because I'm friends with him, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But if I had to work with him, I would choke him out.
Sure. I know sales guys like that. Yeah.
But those two, Gerald was like, we got to go to Jackie's Dream. Let's go to Jackie's Dream. And they went, and the guy was like, nope, keep going. And he was like,
afraid of the neighborhood?
He was afraid of the neighborhood. He's like, we can't come here unless Jody's with us. And
I
was just like, and I think I ended up going with them the next week, but I was like, I'm going to have a hard time not giving him crap the entire time.
Do you like crispy, crunchy fried chicken?
Yeah.
Because they opened one like over in the,
Oh, wait, that's a name of, I was thinking you meant like very crunchy chicken.
Do you like the brand Crispy Crunchy Fried Chicken? With K's. It's Crispy Crunchy with KK, like Krispy Kreme, except Crispy Crunchy. And they opened one over near Sacred Heart Cathedral on North Shore.
Oh, okay.
And I think they're closed on weekends, but they're only open like till 3. They're open like till 3 p.m. during the week. And then they close. Yeah, well, it's delicious.
Okay.
Some of the best fried chicken you'll ever have in your life. And they sell it exclusively at gas stations around the country. So I discovered it at a gas station in Pigeon Forge, back in the back of Pigeon Forge. Okay. And my wife, and I brought my wife there, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then the one on North Shore, which is near where she works just down the road from it, and it's like never open at the when you want to get dinner. You can go there for lunch, but if you have to make a special order and pick it up before 4 p.m. if you want dinner. Well, she's hooked on this chicken, as am I. So we started going to the one on Keith Avenue. I don't even know I couldn't even tell you how to get to Keith Avenue because we have to Google map it every time, except that we were going over to Happy Holler the other night, and we ended up driving right past, hey, we should get chicken. We're here. It's like near Lonsdale.
It's saying the closest one to me right now is a Sitco on Rutledge Pike.
Well, there's one at a gas station on Keith Avenue near Keith Western.
Market,
and Western.
That's wild.
And anyway, I highly recommend. Okay. Because it's whatever they do, they used to use regular, supermarket chicken, but they have a special blend that they inject it. It's with the marinade.
Yeah.
And then however they cook it, my friend Michael Toronto.
Oh, yeah, I know Michael.
Who used to work at Knoxville Opera, works at Second Harvest Food Bank. I saw him the other night at a Marble City Opera board meeting. He's like, you have now got me hooked on crispy, crunchy fried chicken because I'm bugging him for years. He used to go just Chandler's, only Chandler's for him.
Yeah.
He's like, well, since Chandler's closed, I started going to, he likes Jackie's Dream too. I'm not saying he doesn't. But he started going to Crispy Crunchy, and he's annoyed that the one in North Shore is closed all the time. So I said, you need to go on Keith Avenue. He's like, I know. I was at the ribbon cutting for Lonsdale, and I drove past it. I thought of you.
Oh my God.
Yes, that's good
Okay.
stuff. All right.
I've
So
got
anyway,
it pulled up.
so-
It's on my list now.
yeah, check it out. I'll go with you. I mean,
Yeah.
But I'm not. Point being is I'm not. My wife and I'll send my wife there alone because
Yeah.
I don't feel like driving.
Yeah.
So we're not afraid of.
Oh, a friend of mine grew up in Madisonville, Tennessee. We went to college
that's
together.
down where the Benton's Bacon is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we drove through, I think it was Lonsdale. We drove through Lonsdale, and he literally rolled up his window and locked his door. Now, he did that to poke fun because he knew I would give him crap. And he was like, we're driving through, and I roll up the window and lock the doors, and you got your arm out the window, and people are shouting at you across the street. I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while. How's your mama? Like, so a fun fact, in high school, I was the assistant to a DJ who DJ'd parties at the Underground in the Old City, if you
Yes.
remember it, in the Boiler Room. But he also
I don't remember it, but
he
I've
did
heard of it.
house parties in Lonsdale to where literally I would be the big goofy white dude in the corner.
Nice.
To where I would help bring in his crates and he would DJ
Yeah.
and stuff. So it was, yeah. So
See,
I
yeah,
like
I
making
would
fun
much-
of people.
I go over to PBS and Channel 6 a lot, and I
Yeah.
don't like driving on the interstate. Well, I go there early enough in the day that I can take the interstate, but I'm always seem to be done at the point where the interstate is just past the new Sentinel building
Yeah.
is just stopped.
Oh, yeah.
Or super slow.
Always.
So
Always.
I'll always go through Fifth Avenue and Mechanicsville, or I'm much more comfortable taking that way home because it's more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because in the flip side, to go back to 7 hours ago when we started this, that's my standard joke on this, that we're at like
Yeah.
hour 7. In 2006, 2007, I went to New York for 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all these people like, you need to be careful. You need to put your money in different places. You need to do all this. And I just would look at people and
You're
go,
7 feet tall.
who's going to mess with me? Who is going to choose to mess with me? So I'm walking through Times Square, and a dude walks up that's about 6'3", 6'4", and he's got a cigar, and he just starts in on me about wanting money. And I just sat there and listened to him for a while, and I went, I just leaned into his face and went, Bubba, I reckon we're fixing to have a problem. And he just tapped me on the chest and walked away. And I was like, I can't hear my southern accent because I know people in Madisonville or Union County where I need
Maynardville.
subtitles. I need subtitles
Yeah.
to hear.
That took a learning curve to
Yeah.
make sure I got Maynardville and Madisonville.
Yeah,
straight.
Maynardville.
Yeah.
Maynardville. And but I can dip into it because I've
Yeah.
grown up around those people
Sure.
where it's like I am the city boy because I went to Fulton. But anyway, so you come here.
Yeah, one of the best things we did with Phil that first year was basically Phil taught me everything about Knoxville, and Phil's love of East Tennessee is contagious, and it worked. He took me to Sharps Ridge and said, "This is Pickle Park. Be careful."
Yeah.
He took me to a Chinese restaurant in South Knoxville and said, "This is a good place." He took me, all over. We went to Easttown Mall because you need to know about this. Because you're living by Westtown Mall, you need to know that there's an
Yeah.
Easttown Mall.
Oh, yeah.
Except you don't call it that anymore. And everything. So everything I learned, this
Yeah.
intensive class where for 2 weeks of my first indoctrination to Knoxville, I'm just driving around with Phil. He's just telling me all this stuff. I've got this personal tour, and it's absolutely, his love of Knoxville is truly, truly contagious.
So it's
and I caught it big time. So. And then we did broadcasts at city halls. So we went to in Maynardville. We did the Union County Hall or City Hall, whatever. We get there, the mayor is mowing the lawn of City Hall or the county building.
Oh, yeah.
And then we interview him. We did Maryville. When we did Oak Ridge, I was warned: do not make any glow in the dark radioactive jokes, because I'm the guy from out of town. I'll make all the jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Oh, yeah.
knowing. So that we're and this tour all of a sudden is like. I'm being tutored not only in the ways of Knoxville, but all of East Tennessee and where places are in relation to one another. It was great. It was like a total intensive. And so I wish the River had lasted longer as a station because it paid better than any of my other radio jobs. Every other job I took after that was for less money.
Okay.
Which I hate to admit, but it's true. And it was a great station that people loved.
Yeah. And so you come here, you find Einstein Simplified. So did you like immediately, like night one, you're like,
Yeah,
hey, I'm moving here.
In my
and-
interview, I saw them on the night I came here for an interview before I
Yeah.
even did the on-air audition.
Right.
And then I get the job, and my first day on the job, that was been like March, end of March 2002, whatever Holy Week was that year.
Yeah.
March, April. I get the job. I move here toward the end of April, and I'm going to be in town for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks before they put me on the air. I'm going on the air May 1st, live remote from West Town Mall for Hands on a Harley. And there's all these dudes standing around trying to win this Harley by standing there all night long with their hand and not let go of it. They're allowed a bathroom break every hour.
Can I tell you a quick side story,
Yeah,
though?
please.
So when Bill Meyer Stadium was still over there, my dad from the Phil and Calvin Idol show
Yeah.
won a chance to potentially win the ZZ Top car.
Ooh.
They gave it away there, and they gave everybody a key. And if
Yes.
your key turned over the engine,
Yes.
then you won it. So Dad did not win it, but he still has his ZZ Top keychain.
The biggest
from that.
nightmare of those promotions is that you're terribly worried that the first car is going to win it.
Oh yeah, the first
So
person.
we
Yeah.
come up with all of these rigmaroles, all the ways to draw it out and stretch it.
So I
Any way
don't.
we can stall.
It whomever won it very late in the day because
That's good. That's the radio station would be happy then.
I was playing in a baseball tournament and Dad was my coach and he missed because he had to stand there and wait. And it was like 3 or 4 o'clock, and he finally showed up.
Oh, wow.
He was like, they still haven't figured out. Like, so it must have been, and they started at like 6 or 7 in the morning, trying to give that
I've been
damn
at
thing
work at
away.
Stations where we only had we were given like Porsches or something, whatever the top 40, whatever you're trying to appeal to a female or a male, whatever
Yeah.
demographic. So whatever the luxury car is, or the one year we did Jeeps, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We got to a point where maybe we get 5 or 6 keys or 10 keys and hide them in treasure boxes so that we have to go through the whole rigmarole of trying to get people to open the treasure box
Okay.
that had a key. Anything we could do to stretch it out and build
Yeah.
suspense, because so many of these radio promotions are over when the person with the second key
Oh, yeah.
starts the car.
Cranks it.
Yeah, so
Okay,
hands on
Hands
a
on
Harley.
a Harley.
Jerry Lunicky was working at Second Harvest Food Bank.
I know
and
Jerry.
He's standing. That's how I met him. He's standing there
Okay.
with his hand on the car. I wanted to meet Tina Wesson from
Oh.
Survivor because she's from Knoxville. So Phil arranged for her to come by West Town Mall, and I get to meet Tina Wesson because I loved Survivor at the time. And so now I'm introduced to the world of East Tennessee as Phil's new partner. We have T-shirts that say Phil and Murphy in the morning, and we're off to the races. And that job lasted, a year and a half before the
They
river.
changed. Yeah.
Well, they said the river was dying or going away, canceled, because I was working for Dick Broadcasting,
Okay.
and they had tried to sell all of their stations in Knoxville to Citadel.
Okay.
And the ones that they actually owned outright, like WIVK and the WNOX at the time, the news talk station, the ones you would associate with that cluster,
Right.
News Talk and now Sports Animal and Wivik, those three, whatever they had, those sold. But the 100.3 was in their building, and they were operating 100.3 in that building under what's called a LMA, a limited marketing agreement or a licensed marketing agreement. So neither Dick Broadcasting nor Citadel owned it. Johnny Perkle owned it. So Johnny Perkle owned 2 stations in town, the River 100.3 and the other one we talked about, NFZ.
Yeah. WNFC. Yeah.
So he rented one to South Central up on the hill where IMZ and up on South Central on the
Yeah.
Sharps Ridge. He rented 90, whatever it was, number at the time.
94.3.
Is that what it was?
94.3.
He rented that to them, and he rented 100.3 to Dick Broadcasting, but it didn't transfer to Citadel. So there was an issue with the contract, there was an issue with whatever it was. So Dick Broadcasting says, "It's okay. We'll keep running. We'll keep that station,
Yeah.
the intellectual property of it. In fact, we're going to hire a partner for Phil. We're going to really invest in that station." And within a year and a half, Citadel made enough of an offer that Dick Broadcast is like, "Well, sorry everybody, but we're dumping out. Citadel's taken over. Everyone's fired. Some of you, and everyone's fired. Period." Well, there's a public outcry, Save the River, and Citadel decides that they'll keep it going for a little while, but they're only going to hire back some of the staff because they don't
Yeah.
need, they don't need a full staff. They be folded in. They don't need salespeople or promotions people or
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the things they don't need. Maybe a music director, they don't need him because they can just someone else can cover that from their existing staff, all of whom used to be Dick Broadcasting employees anyway. So I don't get hired back. Phil does, presumably at a pay cut, because that's how those things generally work. Is, you know, we'll hire back half the staff at lower salary, and I'm out of work. So that sucks. I moved my family all the way to Knoxville, and
year.
the job lasted a year and a half, and now what? Well, I started trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I very quickly got a job offer to go to South Central and work with Ashley Adams for her morning show. Ashley and Murphy in the morning, it will be.
But during this time you're doing Einstein Simplified.
Oh, we go up the Einstein story. I guess we got to jump back to that real quick. So I moved here first day on the air, May 1st, 2001. I go to a couple of Einstein shows, and they announced that they need to recruit some new members, and we're going to have open auditions in the Old City on Saturday, June 1st. And why do I remember that? Well, it was an important day in my life because I had to be in the Old City anyway for a brew fest.
Oh.
I had to do a live remote from a brew fest in the parking lot of Barley's.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at the calendar going, well, if I have to be there at 4 o'clock and they're open auditions are at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon or whatever, I could totally do that. I could go audition for this improv troupe and then walk half a block
Oh, yeah.
to where I need to be for work. And that sounds like a good idea. I'll do that. And I thought, besides, I'm not even going to get in. I mean, but I need to go through this process. I need to get out there and don't fear. Go ahead and fail. It doesn't matter. In improv, you learn to not be afraid of failing on stage. It's okay. Just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I got into the troupe. You know, I go up there. Everyone else who's auditioning has just taken an improv class through Pellissippi taught by Paul Simmons, one of the founding members of Einstein Simplified.
Yeah.
Except me. I'm the outsider. I'm the weirdo from California who has all these different pop culture references than they do. But I've taken an improv class. Like, I understand the rules of the games. They throw us in there, and I'm doing it right. You know, it's like pickup basketball. I compare it to, if you know how to play, you can play improv with pretty much anybody who also knows how to play. So I make it to callbacks. We go through a process of practices for a month, and they whittle down the callback people from maybe 6 to 3, and 3 of us get into the troupe. One dropped out relatively soon thereafter, so Brad Bumgardner and I made it into the troupe. We debuted on stage June 25th, 2002, and I've been in the show every Tuesday since.
Man.
Except for when I'm on vacation or we take a week off at Christmas, and of course the lockdown messed us up. We missed a bunch of shows, but we made it. That happened after our 25th anniversary. The troupe made it to 25 years. The lockdown occurs, and now we've picked right back up again, and we're still doing every Tuesday now at Scruffy City Hall.
Man,
and I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Please come.
Yeah. So
come see the show.
So did that keep your spirits up when all the crap happened with the river?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah,
I still had
because you still had this group.
Yeah, I still had this group of that to fall back on. My wife got a job, and we're trying to figure out what are we going to do, because I started looking at moving.
Yeah.
But we were at the point in life where we pulled my daughter out of high school in Burbank after her sophomore year, and she did junior, senior year here. And so this is all still within that first 2 years, right? My son, we pulled him out of school there and put him in for 7th and 8th grade here. And as I'm going through these different problems and job changes and issues, we got to a point where my wife said, we're not moving while they're in school. And then as my son started doing well academically, and especially when he got to high school, my wife said, if you take a job in another city, because remember, this is not I lost the River job, I lost the Oldies job.
Yeah.
And when I started working at the Top 40 station, I was making $10 an hour. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I'm thinking I need to find a better paying job somewhere else in the world. And my wife said, we're not moving because he's got a chance to be valedictorian. And if he can be valedictorian, then maybe he'll get a scholarship.
Yeah.
And all those things happened. We stayed here. He became valedictorian of his high school, got a pretty much full scholarship to college, was valedictorian of his college, And in a couple of weeks, we're driving up to Michigan to watch him get his PhD.
Oh my God. Is he really good at math?
Um,
In hour,
he's not
hour 8.
Yeah, remember back when I said I was terrible at math and at everything academically? One of the lessons I learned for my own kids, I would teach them. Remember, my father tried to discourage me from
Right.
being like him. Well, I was more successful in discouraging my children from being anything like me. I said, "Look, you see, to me, my dad was successful.
Yeah.
He worked in New York. He had a big fancy job. He'd fly around the world and do
Yeah.
things." And my kids could see the clear failure that I am,
Oh,
and
God.
were discouraged from going into media and broadcast. And but my son was good at school, and the lesson I learned was that I'm a hare, and the hare and the tortoise.
Oh, yeah.
I'm that guy, and I needed to try to change. And with our kids, I just from the early get-go, it was be the tortoise. We're not doing the TV doesn't go on until your homework is done. Nothing happens until the homework is done. Just knock it out as soon as you get home.
Yeah.
No procrastination. Stop procrastinating. Get it done. So that became his mantra, to the point where he would tell me one time in college, he had a big major exam coming up, and his friends are all having a cram session, and like, "You want to come study with us?" Like, "No, I studied yesterday. I'm going to go to bed." And they're like, "What? How do you mean you studied yesterday?" What? So he'd go to bed, and he'd show up for the exam well rested,
Yeah.
full night's sleep. He'd finish the exam, and he'd be looking around, and he'd be like, "What? You think I must have done something wrong?
Yeah.
I'm finished." And everyone else is still frantically working. And he'd go back and he'd review his whole thing. He's like, "Well, I think I got it right, so the heck with them." So he'd turn in his paper and leave. They used to call him the Curve Buster because he would. Everyone wanted to
God.
study with him because he had great study habits.
Yeah.
Which, granted, he gets all the credit for that. I did not have good study habits. All I could tell him was, "Don't be like me. Be the opposite. Here's what I would have done. Don't do it."
Yeah.
And he followed my advice, and
God.
I love him. What a great kid. And my daughter as well. She's very successful, and both of them make exponentially more money than I do, and that makes me happy.
That's
My son's stipend as a PhD student is more than
Oh
I
my
make
God.
in radio in Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah,
amazing. Good.
good for him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, and I'm talking about my current state where I don't even have a
Yeah,
job.
but-
I don't even actually have a job. I'm a contract employee. I'm a stringer.
But in knowing you for what you are, first and foremost, a hustler. I feel you don't sit on your laurels.
Everything I do is a side. Right now, I'm at the point where I probably couldn't get a salaried job
Yeah.
because I've aged out.
Yeah.
I don't check any of the boxes, and in broadcasting, it's kind of weird because on the one hand, they want me because I've got the expertise,
Right.
but on the other hand, they don't want to have to go through the EOE
Yeah.
of dealing with me, so they'll hire me as an independent contractor for a limited project.
Yeah.
And you get 1099'd, and that's me. I'm Mr. 1099, Mr. Side Hustle.
So I got that at a certain pet company that I used to work for. That I got brought in as an independent contractor to kind of straighten them out. And I walked in the door, and they had moved all the engineers down to the second floor. And I went down there to say hi to a few of them. And there were engineers that I'd never worked with before that came up because I'd worked there for 5 years before. And they were like, "Are you here to fix things?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, what did you think I did? And they're like, "You didn't take any shit off of anybody, and you would fight." And I was like, "Well, I guess that's why I'm here." I went back upstairs and pissed a lot of people off to the point where I got kicked off of one team.
Sure.
And my point of contact, the creative services manager, Ryan, we're sitting up. He was like, I had moved back over there, and I was like, "Wait, I was in the middle of 2 projects over there." I was like, "Am I done with that?" He went, "Oh yeah," and he giggled. I was like, "Oh God, what did I do? What did I do?"
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you on that. But in the time, like with the disruption and everything, you're still picking up different things,
Side
like
gigs, side
like
hustles.
hosting and
Right.
PBS. The PBS was the
Scholars Bowl.
Scholars Bowl.
That is
Yeah.
my favorite. I mean, if there's only room for one thing on my tombstone, that probably would be what I would want.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And by the way, I'm healthy. I'm not dying. I talk about it all the time because my father died when he was 50. So I'm aware that I've outlived him now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to outlive him. Obviously, with every breath I take. My next goal is to outlive my paternal grandfather and then my maternal grandfather.
Okay.
Because one died at 62 and the other died at almost 77.
Okay.
So I've got plans to live
Yeah.
to 78.
Yeah.
And in fact, I have life insurance. I got a discount on my life insurance because of my good health, and they're planning on me living to 80 because that's when it runs out. So that's the plan. But
Scholars Bowl.
Scholars Bowl, I
PBS.
love Scholars Bowl. That I wasn't even supposed to get that job.
Okay.
I was not first choice for that job.
Okay.
And it's funny because people watch it and they go, "Hey, you're like Knoxville's Alex Trebek." Or a guy coming out of the library says to me, "Wait a minute, aren't you the host of High School Jeopardy?" You know,
High School Jeopardy.
well, yeah, that's me. I'm a High School Jeopardy guy, and I love that job. But they didn't want me. They had, over the years, it was sponsored by the News Sentinel. So Diana Morgan was the host for many
Oh, yeah.
years. And when my son, the genius son, was a contestant on Scholars Bowl, she was the host. And I went and sat in the audience. I thought, this is nice.
Yeah.
This is cool. Local TV, high school quiz bowl. I mean, if they had that at my high school, I probably would have enjoyed this. I would have liked to have been on the team. That didn't even occur to me that I would host it. It never crossed my mind because at the time I was probably still working at, who knows where, one of these radio stations when my son was in high school. And then they had another woman on, Sonda Allison, I think, right? Sonda was her first name. I think it was Sonda Allison. Pardon me if I'm wrong. Who hosted it for like 10 years. And at some point I got a call from Jeff Jarnigan, who is, the voice of the Vols and is a big shot at now Cumulus, WIVK and News Talk, and he runs that I think he's the general manager maybe, or something, station manager, whatever it is. He's an operations manager. He's something important. But he was between jobs. He, like me, had worked now at each of the three major radio clusters.
Yeah.
And he had been at the one that I had just left, and I think had not yet gone to the B97 and South Central up there. So he got a job at PBS as assistant general manager. When he left, they didn't fill that job. I don't know if they just made it up for him, but I don't know. It's nice, but he was there. He's like, "Hey, they're updating Scholars Bowl. Sonda Allison has left. We're looking for a host, but they've already decided on Jack Ryan." And Jack Ryan's a good guy, and he's popular, and he's younger than me, and he's got a lot going for him, right? In terms of he looks better on TV than I do, mostly. But he was a good. So they were going to have him do it.
God, I'm trying not to make a joke. He also needs an Apple box to stand on to be seen on camera. I think
fortunately, he and I are roughly the same height. So
is he? I thought I've met him a few times, and he was very small.
I don't recall. I'm pretty sure he and I are about the same height.
Okay.
But he was going to do the show, but he's so busy. He's like program director of Merle FM.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Maybe, and he had at the time, I think he had a limo business on the side for his side hustle.
Okay.
He had things going on.
Yeah.
And to my benefit, he was unable to do all 60 shows or 50 shows or however many there were that year. And Jarnigan spoke up and said, who could probably do it is that Frank Murphy. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so." Because I had been doing volunteer work at PBS. I would go over there and do pledge drives. And when I was always the guy that would stick on off by himself. And I'm like, why can't I be over in the main pledge drive? They're like, no, you don't understand. Whoever's over there, we bring in these guests from the community, or maybe they're from a sponsor or whomever, or maybe it's even someone from the staff. But they'll be over there, and they always either talk too long or too short. Whatever it is, whatever time we tell them, they never get it right. You are going to be over here at the second desk, because when we come to you, and we're going to tell you, you've got 2.5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, okay. Or we're going to come to you and tell you, you've got 28 seconds. I'm like, oh, okay. And whatever it is, you seem to always stop on time. They don't. Like, oh, okay. Because that would, I mean, what's the job? The
Yeah.
job is you're sitting there and you're BSing, you're ad-libbing
Yeah.
about whatever premium it is that we're selling with your membership.
Yeah.
You know, it's Trans-Siberian Orchestra DVDs or whatever it is.
Going to
Downton
see
Abbey.
Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah,
live.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. Or it's I think it was Andy Wood came by. Whoever it was, whatever guitarist, whatever the Irish, not the Irish tenors, but the poor guy died. I remember.
Flatley, the Irish dancers.
All these people, whoever
Yeah.
it was, they'd either come in and be a visiting guest, celebrity guest, or it didn't matter. I was just giving away the DVDs if you join.
Right.
Well, they'd tell me the start, and they tell me a rough time of how much it is. But the next thing you know, you get the 30-second symbol, which is half a clock. I've made like a C, and they can see with their hands.
Okay.
Or they just start giving you the 10 fingers, and they count it down. And I'm like, okay, it's like on radio.
Yeah.
When you're talking up the intro to hit the post, all you have to do is hit the post. That's
Yeah.
the assignment.
Yeah.
And so you just start saying things like, and don't forget, if you join today, you can call our operators. They're standing by now with the number on your screen, and you could stop there. Or if they're still counting, or go online, you could stop there to EastTennesseePBS.org. And if you still have to keep going, be sure to do it tonight. You know, whatever it is, you have all these little, what would you call that? It's like when you're building making a table not wobbly, you put a shim, shim, whatever it is. You just have these little pieces of conversation.
I think it's Shim, and I think Shiv is in prison where you shank somebody.
But whatever it is, you have all these little pieces that you just hold back until you know how many seconds you've got.
Yeah.
And then you stop.
Yeah.
Because I learned that from Don Geronimo. He's look, talking on radio it's all you BS and you BS. The key is knowing when to stop.
Yeah.
As long as you stop before they start singing, or as long as you stop before they have no fingers held up, you've done the job. That's the job.
That's the job.
So anyway, I would do that on PBS, but they hadn't thought of me as a Scholars Bowl guy.
Yeah.
Well, we show up, and Jack and I were told this is what you're going to do, but they really just threw us into it, and we had to figure it out all pretty much on our own.
Yeah.
Because I got to be honest, I hadn't watched a lot of Scholars Bowl except for my son was on. And now here we are. It wasn't on every night back in those days.
Yeah.
It was on, when there's, it was on once a year for X number of weeks. They'd film it and then show it from January to March, and then it would be gone. So
I think we had a group from Fulton on when I was in high school, and I only watched it because it was three out of the four, or however many were my friends.
So I don't have a lot of frame of reference on how to do the show, and there's a lot. So if you go back and watch that first season with Jack Ryan and me, we're both pretty bad at it. We're pretty bad at it because there's so much, and it's they changed the way they did the questions that year. Sonda used to have every question on a half sheet of paper, and she would have to know which ones were toss-ups and which ones were bonuses.
Okay.
Well, with us, they changed it. They put the toss-ups on a spreadsheet and the bonuses on a piece of paper, and you're jumping back and forth, and you're trying to remember the rules. And we bumbled and stumbled, but they understood that we were new at it,
right? And
they gave us some breathing room. And I found, though, that some of the harder academic questions, I took more naturally to.
Okay.
The pronunciations or just some of the nerdier stuff.
Yeah.
That's really what it ultimately boils down to is Jack's cooler than me. I'm nerdier than Jack. This show is nerdier than Jack.
Yeah.
So he kind of lost interest in it after a while. He's like, because he would have to, prep and write himself notes, and I learned from him. So I'm not criticizing the way he prepped for the show because I ultimately copied what he did. But I was not knowing that you could do that. So I would show up and kind of read the questions almost cold. I'd skim through them. Jack would take them home the night before and study them and make his notes on it, which is what you should do.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were allowed to do that. I thought they were, So now I do it the same way, prep the same way Jack used to. But he didn't want to do it after a year. That surprised me. So and I speak up and say, "Hey, can I do all the episodes?" And they're like, "Oh no, we've already found
oh my God,
someone to replace Jack." Like, well, it didn't work out. The person they wanted didn't work out, and now they're like, well, "What are we going to do?" So Ernie Roberts, who was the producer of the show, he's like, well, I've got Math Line. I can host some of the shows. So he jumps in and he's hosting them. And he's the guy who didn't want me, really, frankly. Sorry, Ernie. He's the guy who wanted Jack Ryan and then wanted to replace Jack Ryan with another host. But he's the producer of the show, right? So finally, by my third season on there, I'm like, I can do all the episodes.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're so busy with radio because you're on the radio every day. We thought you'd be too busy. I'm like, I'll make it work. I love this.
Yeah.
I will figure out a way to rearrange my whole life and schedule to be available on the days that we're taping Scholars Bowl because it's like 10 days.
Oh, okay.
It's like you do 60 episodes. That year we did 60 episodes. And it was maybe, I think we were doing 6 a day.
Wow.
And if not 6 a day, if we were doing fewer, then maybe it was 12 days of taping. But between 10 and 15 days
Okay.
of recording. It was all done intense, and then they spread it out and show it. It takes 12 weeks to show it
Yeah.
because 5 episodes a week, right? And then they started building up enough reruns, but it turns out the catch was all the episodes prior to Jack and me coming aboard were not in high def.
Oh.
So they didn't want to rerun those. That's why it was only on during the limited time and whatever.
Okay.
But when Jack and I came on, they put in new cameras or whatever they did. Everything became high def on the show. So when you watch Scholars Bowl to this day, you generally are going to see a rerun from since I joined.
Okay.
So you might see Jack
Okay.
and me, or you might see Ernie and me, or you might see Mimi and me hosting the show. But they show it every night, every weeknight now, because they have enough. They've built up enough of a
Over the
library of
years.
reruns, and we're adding to it every year with new episodes.
Okay.
So
Where is PBS? How you got connected with Dr. Bass?
Phil Williams is how I got connected with Dr. Bass.
Okay.
Let me take a gulp of water.
I do have a funny Dr. Bass story.
Because that's a story.
I saw him speak. There was a bookstore that was on Kingston Pike for a short period of time, across from Gourmet Market, and he was releasing the book where it was him and his writing partner, and it was
John Jefferson.
Yeah, and it was famous stories like did the Big Bopper shoot
Yeah.
the pilot in the back of the
That
head?
book is called Beyond the Body Farm.
Yeah, I've got it right up there, signed by them. But he's given a talk beforehand, and I'm standing in the back, and he and John are up there. John's sitting down, and he's talking, and then he goes, he's like, "So, here's the thing with lot lizards," and he was like, "So the state of Tennessee is very big on lot lizards and the murdering of lot lizards because it's such a long state, and you have these truckers." And then he pauses at that moment, and in the front row is like a dad and his like 8-year-old daughter, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, Dad. Is it okay if I talk about this?" And the dad's like, I guess. And he was like, "Okay, so the thing is, they take the lot lizard in, and then they kill him, and then and he keeps, and I'm in the back, snot coming out of my nose. I'm laughing so hard, and I was just
I got to
like,
ask him about this.
This is the
Great.
most amazing. Now that's been 15 years. That's been a long time.
Not too long ago, we were doing a presentation at in Sevierville. It was either at the Rose Glen Literary Festival, or more likely it was at Wilderness Wildlife Week or Wildlife Wilderness Week.
Okay.
And he's going to be doing, for whatever reason, he decides to do the Zooman Husky case,
Oh, jeez. Okay.
which is basically Zooman Husky murdered prostitutes on
Yeah.
Catawba Lane alongside the interstate. And there's a kid and a dad in the front row, and the kids can't be, and I'm up on stage with Dr. Bass, and the kid can't be that old. He must have been a tween or,
Yeah.
maybe 10, 12, 11, 12, somewhere. Prepubescent kid. And Dr. Bass is going through the slides, and he gets to the one where the naked prostitute has slid down the hill until she hits a tree and is now stuck on the tree.
Yeah.
And parts of her are missing. I think maybe her head rolled down the hill. Whatever horrible things have happened
Yeah.
to this poor girl. And he starts going off on a tangent, and this picture stays up on the screen uncomfortably long.
Oh, God.
The dad took his son and they left.
Oh, God.
And I felt bad because I'm like, I don't have the clicker. I can't change the slide. I can't. He's on a roll. Everyone else in the room is like, and I'm the only one who can see the dad and the kid squirming because Dr. Bass is talking. He's engaged.
Yeah.
He's going, and I'm there just wait, I'm
Yeah.
there with the fire extinguisher in case anything goes wrong, basically. And here's
Yeah.
something's about to go wrong, but the guy left. So I learned my lesson that day, and now sometimes I'll actually work the clicker sometimes. So,
Okay.
well,
so
how did I
Phil-
meet Dr. Bass?
So
So
Phil-
Phil Williams thought it would be hilarious if he had Dr. Bass come in for an interview for Halloween or around near Halloween, and pretend that I would have to spend the night at the Body Farm. Because
Okay.
he's already done this to me. He's already yanked my chain with a couple of pranks. He had one of his friends who had a seafood restaurant come in, and I love New Orleans style food.
Okay.
Well, they thought they were going to bring me some kind of gumbo or jambalaya or something. Well, they decided, him and Phil, to mess with the food and put coffee grounds in it and some other nastiness to see what I would say.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed because I was really looking forward to some good jambalaya that I will never go to that restaurant. In 20 years, I will never go to that restaurant, nor will I mention its name, nor will I ever say anything about it because I'm still burned. But another prank was I had to go sell hot dogs at a Vols game. And it turned out to be like against Florida, and it was a monsoon, and
Oh.
I'm just soaked to the bone. So you can look it up, the Florida game from 2002 or 3. It must have been 2.
So I was there. So
course
my
you were
dad
there,
and
yeah.
I have been going to games since before I can remember. So, oh yeah, I was
And
there.
they had a famous quarterback for Florida who went to the NFL.
wasn't Werfel.
He went to the Bears, maybe.
Oh, it was Rex.
Yeah, Rex Grossman.
Gross. Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm a
So-
Bears fan, and I could not stand him.
I'm pretty sure he played that day, right?
And he ended up taking them to the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
but I still didn't like him. He's always a Florida guy to me. I can't.
Sure.
I bleed
Well,
orange.
I was
Yeah.
so miserable trying to sell
Oh,
these
yeah.
hot dogs and trying to make a bit out of it and record it for, so I could play the
in the
tape
pouring rain.
on Monday. I left at halftime.
Yeah.
And I mean, this sounds awful. I apologize to all Vols fans. That half of that football game is the only time and that was 20 years ago. That's the only Vols game I've attended. And I left at halftime because I was just soaked and miserable. And I went to another Vols game like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later against MTSU, but I stayed. That was all about tailgating, and I never went in the stadium. So that's it.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I've been there, done that. Check that box off. Been there. So I'm sure it's great. I know people who love it, but
I get annoyed with drunk people at the games, and especially now that they sell beer,
yeah.
it drives me nuts to watch people stand in line for beer for literally 3/4 of the game,
Unbelievable.
and for $17 Bud Lights.
When they sell flasks you can smuggle inside your tie right over there at Nothing Too Fancy.
Oh yeah.
They got smuggle flasks.
Oh yeah.
Well,
The best was I saw this couple that he was kind of tall, 6'3", 6'4", is wearing a hoodie, and they had put airplane bottles in it. They had put so many.
no.
It had to have been like 30 airplane bottles.
Did it jingle?
Yeah, it was way down to where it's like, how did they not notice that?
Unbelievable.
And the one, his wife kept pulling out bottles, and at one point it's like, there can't be any more, and she just kept pulling out bottles the entire game.
My dad loved to drink at football games, but he would hide it in soup. He would bring. I mean, I think it was allowed. We'd go to he was a New York Giants fan, and at Yankee
He
Stadium,
deserved drinks if
Yeah,
he was a New York Giants
exactly.
fan.
Fred Dreyer, star of Hunter, was a New York Giant
Yeah?
player about that time. That's a reference to one of your other podcasts.
Yeah.
So he would. I was in high school. I guess I had a learner's permit, and this is a true story. I did this bit as a comedy bit on stage when I was talking about my parents drinking. But we go to this football game, and at the time the Giants were playing in New Haven, Connecticut at the Yale Bowl because Yankee Stadium was being rebuilt
Okay.
in the 1977, 78. And I've got a learner's permit. My father and his brother got so drunk on this cream of mushroom soup that was laced with cooking sherry, or not even cooking sherry, regular, like nice sherry, that
Cream of mush. Oh,
they
God.
told me I had to drive home. They were too wasted to drive home. And we're in Connecticut. I don't live in Connecticut. I don't have a learner's permit for Connecticut. We live in Yonkers, New York, which is, I mean,
Oh, my
not that
God.
far from Connecticut. It's Westchester County, but I mean, the joke is actually true, is that we had taken the station wagon to get there, and I had ridden in the back of the station wagon, and it was when they would face the wrong way. The seat
yeah.
would face the
Oh,
wrong
yeah.
way. So I said it was easy for me to drive home because it was like everything I saw in reverse. You know? So,
God.
yeah. So that was
Okay, so
and so drinking at the football games. So back to
Dr. Bass.
Dr. Bass. So I'm going to be pranked and have to supposedly spend the night at the body farm, which of course can't really happen. But
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be new, and I'm supposed to not know that. But I start talking to Dr. Bass, and on this different level of like, oh, tell me more about decomposition. I'm fascinated by this. Tell me about Patricia Cornwell. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And Phil realizes that he's been outmaneuvered. His prank is not going to work because now all of a sudden these two are immediate pals. and anyway, so I leave and I go and next job with Ashley. I book Dr. Bass to come in and we talk to him about whatever. And now he's starting the writing business with John Jefferson. So next job it was a journal broadcasting at the time before it became Scripps. And one of the things that had to happen relatively early on was the guy who was doing the public affairs shows. I think he was caught drinking on the job, but he was fired, and they need someone to fill in and do this half-hour interview show. So they tell Kim Hansard and me on the morning show that we're going to have to do it. I don't care how you get it done. Just fill half an hour every Sunday morning at 6.
Good Lord.
So he'd pre-record it. And plus, the lady from the Milk Council is already scheduled to come in for her quarterly interview about milk. With the previous...
So you still got the 2%? 2% still a thing?
So there were some guests already booked. So next thing you know, we're doing a half-hour interview about milk. Or she's doing it, or I'm doing it. We would take turns doing it because our heads would explode. It was like the one about Water Safety Day at Dollywood. They would bring in these teenage lifeguards for us to interview, and you can't get. Well, I would, because I would basically start. I would take over, and because I'd taken a lifeguard class once, I knew enough. So that the kids doesn't know, they're not interested, and I would just start filling time. That's the job.
Right.
Fill half an hour.
Right.
Talk until it's time to quit. Right. That's the secret. Fill the time until the show's over and quit, and then you stop. So we eventually stopped booking the milk lady, and we started booking people that we were interested in. You know, I'd have the opera maestro or the symphony guy come in, or somebody. I'd have Dr. Bass come in. So I started interviewing Dr. Bass and John Jefferson every time they had a book come out.
Okay.
Which basically was once a year for 10 years.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And they always would get excited to come in, and they were looking forward to my interviews. They'd be thrilled that I was... And I eventually asked them, you know, and I'd watch them on other TV stations and other things. Like they'd go on Live at 5 at 4. They'd go on all the TV stations. I'd watch. And some of these shows, it seemed like no matter what the book was about, no matter what the interesting case was, no matter what, it was always, well, how did you start the body farm? It was the same old questions. And I, having read the book, we're not interested in the same stuff we talked about last time. Let's dive in, and we'll talk about whatever.
Right.
And they would always mention to me like I was the best student of all of these interviews they would do because I had done the assignment. I had learned from my own stupidity from earlier in life, and I had read the book. They send you a copy 2 weeks in advance of its publication so that you can read it.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, I'm their favorite interviewer. Next thing you know, I have come up with this harebrained scheme. I've found my way into the FBI Citizens Academy, probably because of the Dr. Bass knowledge. I'm nominated by the FBI to be in this Citizens Academy. So you go, you take a class, you learn yay. Next thing you know, I'm the president of the FBI Citizens Academy Alumni Association. Because I'm that guy at the meetings who can't shut up. This happened to me with the Front Page Follies.
Oh, yeah.
I end up on the board of ETSPJ. I end up on the board of the Front Page Foundation. I make some stupid suggestion that everyone hates, and I'm thinking, this is it. They're going to kick me off the board, and they make me president.
Yeah.
So I have to come up with this harebrained scheme. My kids used to love going to the Harry Potter debuts when the Harry Potter book came out at midnight. And I'm like, hey, let's have Dr. Bass have a book signing for the FBI Citizens Academy. But the way I didn't want to have it on a Tuesday. Books always came out on Tuesdays those days. It like record albums always used to come out on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And it was a conceit to get the most possible sales before the charts were tabulated on Monday so that you'd possibly make it onto the best-selling charts, or the Hot 100 or whatever. So, but I had Einstein Simplified on Tuesdays, remember? So
Yeah.
I couldn't have the Dr. Bass
Yeah.
event on a Tuesday. Plus, he's going to be at Books A Million, or he's going to be at the one Barnes & Noble, or the one you said on Kingston Pike, which I can't
Yeah.
remember either. And so I thought, well, we have these meetings on Monday nights generally because it's more convenient for me. All I have to do is convince HarperCollins Publishing that I want to have a book signing event before they're ready for it, at a funeral home or whatever. I'll find some venue, and convince them that it's going to be cool, and it's going to be like a Harry Potter event.
Yeah.
So that's the assignment. So I do all of those things. I get a funeral home to donate their facility. In fact, I even got Scrubs cupcakes. We did Gentry
yeah.
Griffey. We did Gentry Griffey first time, and then the one out west on it's right along near Scripps, the old Scripps Network buildings.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a couple of these funeral homes were like vying. Can we have Dr. Bass come to our funeral home?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure. So Scrubs Cupcakes made a whole batch of Death by Chocolate cupcakes, which is all I'd asked for. I called her up and said, hey, can you give me a bunch of, Kathleen Robinson, can you give me a bunch of
Yeah.
Death by Chocolate cupcakes for Dr. Bass for free that I'm going to give out at the FBI Citizens Academy and blah, blah, blah. So they show up. She's handmade a tombstone for every one of them out of candy, and they're beautiful and they're delicious. So we have our fun little party. We sell some books. They give a speech. This becomes a thing. So I do this multiple books, and then the ladies who arrange all of Dr. Bass's book signings start inviting me to these other events, or I go to show up at the Books A Million in Oak Ridge for a book signing. I'm just there to say hi. It's like, well, do you want to say, make an announcement? Maybe you can introduce Dr. Bass. Oh, yeah, sure. Hey, while you're up there, why don't you mention that we also have T-shirts for sale? Hey, do you and your wife want to come to this dinner at Echo Bistro for free? We'll feed you for free, maybe, but you get up and you'll introduce Dr. Bass, right? And so all of a sudden, I've eased my way into this, where I'm the guy who does the commercial. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bass is coming up. We want to remind you that bonezones.com is here. And, of course, we have a full selection of all of the Jefferson Bass books that you can have personalized. And we have Dr. Bass hats and T-shirts and all the other things that they sell, the merch.
I didn't realize they had merch
Yeah.
other than books.
They had key tags, challenge coins, hats, Dr.
amazing.
Bill Bass groupies, hats and T-shirts. Now we're selling resin skulls, lifelike skulls, and he signs across the superorbital ridge.
Oh, my God.
I'll show you some of the merch when when you're on my podcast, if you want. So, and then it switches to the point where I'm getting the free dinner, and they're like, well, we need you to come to this other thing over in Pigeon Forge,
Yeah.
or over in Clinton or Oak Ridge or whatever, wherever it is. And they start saying, well, we'll pay you a little bit if you can do it. Because instead of getting a dinner, I'm going to get a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And that, I'm like, yes, please. You're going to pay me to hang out with Dr. Bass? So I've become kind of part of the team, the Bone Zones team. In fact, I've got a text from them while we were talking to get ready for the next thing, which is going to be his birthday, 94th birthday bash.
Wow.
So I'll show up and I'll help promote it, obviously.
Yeah.
Then help at the event, facilitate. And the thing that he loves best is how I facilitate his question and answer. So remember I said Rick Springfield thought I was good at facilitating Q&A.
Yeah.
I've gotten this practice with Dr. Bass, who lost most of his hearing in the Korean War. So and you know how people are at events, right? Sometimes they come up and they can speak clearly and succinctly, and their question makes sense. Other times, in the rare instance where someone starts rambling, oh, Dr. Bass, I'm such a fan of your years, bodies, UT, forensics. Didn't you have a case? I love the time. And they say all this stuff. And he's glossed over because he's looking at me like, and I give him the nod like, I got this. So they say whatever they're going to say, and I'm picking out the pieces from it.
Right.
And it's the cremation. They want to know about the cremation. Or, they want to know about that guy who faked his death. Or, they want to know about the Big Bopper. Or, they want to know about the origins of the body farm. Whatever the nugget is that is somewhere mixed into their question. Then they stop talking. And I turn to Dr. Bass and I take the microphone. I really boom it loud. Hey, Dr. Bass, they want to know about the crematory in Noble, Georgia. Oh, the Tri-State Crematory in Noble, Georgia. Well, blah, blah, blah. And he answers the question.
And he's off and running.
Right.
Yeah.
And then afterward, he'll look at me and go, I love working with you.
That person talked for 27 minutes.
Yeah. And you summed it up in
And
7 seconds.
Somehow there was a question in there.
Yeah. Right. And that happens everywhere we go. Some people are able to deliver a coherent question, but a lot of times, well, sometimes I have a little fun with it. We did a group of high school students who were studying to be medical. They're going to go in the medical field, and they were from all over the state. So this Memphis, Nashville, everywhere. Every county of Tennessee was represented at this event. And the question they asked was, they were asking him, Dr. Bass, which was your most rewarding case? And I say, they want to know which one paid the most. And everyone's like, no, that's not what we asked.
You said rewarding.
I thought you meant, no,
Yeah.
we all knew what he meant.
I know.
I said, they want to know how much you get paid, Dr. Bass.
Yeah.
And everyone laughed.
Okay, well, I have a few answers here at the end that are like one-offs, but before we get to that, so was Frank and Friends born out of the pandemic? Or what was it that...
It was born out of me losing my salaried radio job.
Okay.
But that happened during the pandemic. So I continued working during the lockdown. I went to work every day, 5 days a week, and continued doing my regular job. Actually, 6 days a week. I had to pull a weekend shift. I was allowed to voice track it in advance if I wanted.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was easier just to drive over there on Saturday morning and just do it live. I'll say do it live but we nobody in radio. Some people in radio still do it live, and they can if you got that kind of time in your day. It's inefficient for me because I usually have some other side hustle to go to. So you go over, you pre-record your part in a fraction of the time, you go home. Well, they eliminated my job in September of 2020.
Okay.
So that was a full 6 months
into it,
and things were starting. I mean, in Tennessee, things were a little loosened up by then, but now I'm stuck staying home, and I don't know what to do. I decided I'm going to start writing a book, which I think I mentioned, and I stopped because of the podcast. In that first month, I wrote so much book that I got the bulk of it, what I've done so far, and now I've started picking it up again. I'm trying to finish this task for multiple personal reasons, but that was my project. I was going to do that while I tried to find another salaried radio or TV job. So I start contacting Channel 6 to see if I can do something with them on the on Living East Tennessee. They needed, of course, I'm not. They don't want me to be the host of Living East Tennessee, but I can show up and fill in for free. That'd be cool. If you want to help out.
Yeah.
But
I had that with a nonprofit where I met with them about doing their social media, and I gave them an actual quote, a real quote, because they were talking about all the fundraising they were going to do. They were going to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So I gave them a real quote, and I was like, "Here's what it'd be," and they're like, "Oh no." But if you want to give us any, if you want to give us any ideas for free, like we will gladly take that. I think. That was the last text I had with that person.
Yeah, well, even Friends of Literacy, which I think is a great organization, and they want me to MC their event. I have to ask them, well, does it pay? No.
Yeah.
So we have to work out some kind of deal. So I said, well, could you at least put my beautiful Jody Collins designed logo on all of the materials so I get something out of it?
Yeah.
Because I'm now in the gig economy. I can't. When you work full-time for a broadcasting station, whether TV or radio, going out and volunteering in the community helps you in your day job.
Yeah.
They put that, they would ask me every quarter, what did you go do? And I said, well, I emceed this, that, and the other thing for free, and I interviewed so-and-so, and blah, 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 blah. This is what I did. And they write all that down, and it goes into the public file that goes to the FCC, and when it comes time for license renewal, actually the public file they send this report into the FCC every quarter. Here's what Frank Murphy did, and here's what Kim Hanser did, and here's what other DJs did. So they loved me because I was always doing all this stuff. Well, I can't afford to do it for free, but how do I say no to Helen Ross McNabb and the military services? And all I got to do is go to a barbecue festival and announce the winners, except it's in Maryville, so at least I get some logo exposure out of that. Friends of Literacy, and a few others I've said no to. But so the time, here it is, September 2020. I'm going to try to get another job. I'm in touch with the general manager at Channel 6, trying to figure out anything, if I can do anything over there. And he's like, well, we wouldn't pay for that, but what you're describing is kind of like these guys. We have these guys, these brothers or their friends, whatever they are, who go up in the Smoky Mountains and they make they're nature photographers, trail photographers, and hiking guides, and they're trying to get their own hiking business going by being great photographers, and they want to be known as trail guides. They left their day jobs. So I want that deal. I'll do that, but I'll do it outside the national park. They can have every waterfall and every trail. Mima and I'll ride our jazzy scooters over to whatever the other thing is. That I'll go to the trampoline place. I'll go to the mini golf. I'll go to the haunted house. Whatever. I'll do all the other things. He's like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good. So that idea is formulating around the same time as the Frank and Friends show is formulating. But I wasn't initially planning the same podcast the way it is. My daughter says to me, Dad, you got to write the book. And I'm like, well, I was thinking about podcast. So here's what you'll do is you can interview people on the podcast, and then we'll write, and that'll be the book is you basically take all that and then write it up. So that was the original idea for it was I write a chapter, someone in the story in that chapter from radio or from my family reads the chapter, and then we do a podcast about the chapter.
Okay.
And then I edit the chapter, filling in the gaps that I've lost.
Yeah.
That I've missed. The idea was my daughter said, oh, Dad, tell the baby tiger story. I love the baby tiger story, which is basically her at 3. And I put a baby tiger. I brought her to the tigers. I don't know what I was doing. So
you were a young father.
I was a young father. And we're backstage at the circus. Of course I'm going to let her play with the wild animals. What else would you do? So that was the original concept for it. And then my friend Krisha calls me up and says, hey, how do you feel about getting our old podcast going again now that you're unemployed? And I'm like, she had burned me before. We did a podcast called Some Antics.
Okay.
And I loved it. I thought, while we're both working in radio, she was doing mornings on the country station, and I'm doing afternoons on the oldie station. And, we would normally pass like ships in the night and not see each other, but we would make plans to meet at lunchtime at Waffle House and record an episode of this podcast, which was mostly about improv. It was very improv heavy, but we had fun, and we had some people who liked it. But then her life changed. She quit the radio station. She quit a bunch of things. She quit her marriage. She quit a bunch of things and disappears on me. And I'm like, oh, well, that went away. And now I'm out of work. She calls and says, hey, let's get the old bit back together. And I said, well, it's going to be different. We're going to do it this way, and it's going to be more of like a radio show and less of an open-ended conversation, because I'm thinking if I can create a show that would appeal to her former radio listeners and my former radio listeners, that's why the show originally was supposed to be 20 minutes and tight, commercial at the mid-roll. The original vision for the show was to be a replacement for instead of listening to Bobby Bones, you could listen to two local people on demand during the course of your commute.
Yeah.
Right? And we were putting out 5 shows a week.
Yeah.
So we hired you to do the logo. We got a website. We did all the things. And then her life changes again. She gets a job at Hatfield and McCoy as an actress. Oh. And that's the end of that. So now I've committed myself to Channel 6 to do these Seymour Smokies videos with Krisha. And I've signed a contract with them, a trade contract. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? So I had to keep that going. And Catherine Frady from Marble City Opera says to me, hey, my husband thinks you and I should do a show together. And that's based on a couple of things that we had done for Marble City Opera. I did a behind-the-scenes episode for her. We co-hosted their video of Tosca, starring Catherine. I came on and ad-libbed the plot of Tosca before each act, and we had fun. I just watched it the other night. They showed it at Central Cinema. So she says, you and I should do a show together. I throw her into the mix. We do all the Smokies episodes for the summer. And she's like, what about the regular podcast? I'm like, well, I'm a little gun shy. But she had a motive too. She wanted to learn how to host a show. She wanted to add that to her arsenal. and it's benefited her because now she's, she took another job in Baton Rouge, an additional job to
Right,
Marble City Opera.
right.
And her first day in Baton Rouge, they say, you got to go to a TV interview. And she said, walks right into it. And she told
Yeah.
me, she said, I was so glad that we've been doing all these podcasts together because you get over that fear of it. You realize, I told her all the same stuff. I said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever you say is going to be fun. The basic rules of improv. Anything you say is going to be correct. I will deal with it. And that's the way the show works, is we deal with each other.
Do you know how many people that I have had to beg to be on, and they're like, I just don't know. I don't know. It's being recorded, and it's really important. And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It doesn't mean anything. I was like, and trust me, you'll have a good time. I
Yeah.
don't know. I've had so many people turn me down because they're like, no, I just don't feel comfortable with that. I was like,
understand.
and all of them, I say, you have to trust me that at the end you'll be like, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I was like, because it's very low stakes. Very low stakes.
exactly.
And they still don't feel
Well, if
comfortable.
you think of it in terms of over-the-air broadcast in the old days where it's
Oh, yeah.
network and everyone's watching and everyone's
Yeah.
listening and everyone's hanging on your every word, there's a very strong chance that someone has fast-forwarded through this chunk of the podcast, or you fast-forwarded through some other chunk, and okay, you're allowed. That's okay.
Yeah.
When Erin Donovan's talking about her disgusting injury, I'm like, I think I can hit the. I think I have a 30-second skip button on here somewhere. Don't
But
I?
you may miss us talking about Tinder for half an hour.
It's possible.
Yeah. Okay, so she comes on.
So Frankie
host,
came on,
yeah.
and we resumed the podcast. I had to rebrand it.
Yeah.
So as you know, I paid you to make a Krisha and Frank logo, which was so nice. It was so perfect, and I'm like, I hate to do this, but I need to pay you again to rebrand it as Frank and Friends, even though the number of letters isn't perfect.
Yeah.
Krisha and Frank had the right number of letters, the way your logo, everything was balanced, and I've fallen in love with the new logo.
Okay.
But at the time, I'm like, what? I can't call it that. I gotta come up with a different name.
Yeah.
I gotta call it, Frady and Frank, or Frank and Frady, but then she's,
Frank and Frady.
but she was aware that she's not going to do every episode.
Yeah.
So we said we got to call it Frank and Friends, because as it turns out, she did, 50 episodes
Oh,
in
yeah.
a row, but then got to the point where she was not available. So starting with like episode 50 or something like that, I started having a lot of guest hosts on,
Yeah.
which has been fun, except for the booking process. Here I am. Remember I said I didn't want to be a producer and book guests anymore.
that is the one part to where it's like
It's tedious,
I
ponderous, man.
I am at the point to where with the recording of this episode, I'll have 3 episodes banked, and I
Cool.
feel so
Makes you feel good, doesn't it? Yeah.
But I will say there are times where I'll record. There was like a 1-2 week period where I recorded 9 episodes in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm good for months. And then all of a sudden it got down to I had 1 left. I was like, oh crap!
Yep,
I gotta keep this going.
You got to constantly keep feeding the beast.
Yeah.
If
But
you want, because you have to, and if you have a podcast that's so intermittent. In fact, there's a couple of friends, maybe some we've even mentioned, who announced big plans to start podcasts, and I subscribe, and I was hanging on every episode, and all of a sudden, after 2-3 episodes, it just disappears.
Yep.
And I'm like, what happened to that show? I wanted to.
So I've got a secondary one on movies that I have 23 episodes recorded.
Oh,
But because I'm going to do a Patreon on
has
it.
it come out yet?
No, because I'm going to do a Patreon. But the same thing. I was relying on people for the Patreon, and they've all crapped the bed.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I have to do it myself. I was like, so I've been having to shift, and now it's like I have to find the time to start releasing that.
Well, my friend Bean from K-Rock is probably my biggest fan and my biggest critic, because he'll tell me, too much fig talk on the past episodes.
Okay.
In fact, he said, but he'll tell me in a comedic way. He'll say, why don't you start a second podcast that's just about figs, which basically means I don't have to listen to that one.
Okay.
So-
I will say,
But how do you, is that worth it?
Mr. Bean, I'm gonna call him Mr. Bean. Mr.
That's
Bean.
Rowan Atkinson.
I know. I don't need any criticism on this being an 18-hour podcast. I know. It's like, you're just not a fan of Ramble Man. If you were a fan of Ramble Man, you'd understand.
This is the rambling
that
part.
some of them are like 18 hours long, and that's just how it is.
Well, it's like, if you go to audibletrial.com/FrankenFriends show to get your free 30-day premium membership and the one download, you want to get the longest one you can.
Yeah.
That's what Rambling Man is.
I have friends that they have a
I didn't mean to really do a commercial for Audible. That was a
No,
joke.
you're fine.
But it's
You're
legit.
fine.
You can actually go there.
do it.
And I get $15 if you do.
There you go. If they are traveling to like the Charleston area where they have a house, they will bank episodes of Ramblin' Man and listen to them all the way down
Nice.
and all the way back. So they're like, we're never current.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, within 2 days, we will be current. I was like,
Yes.
I was like, well, cool.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so Franken Friends, you're doing it with Catherine. You've started doing
Bringing in guest hosts.
and it's video and audio.
Well, because I found that, and my daughter, I used to talk to my daughter too, that a lot of the times they will prefer to use YouTube as their podcast app.
Anytime I've listened to a bunch, and I always watch on YouTube because I
Yeah.
like.
Bean only listens to the audio.
Okay.
That's his thing, because he'll put in the earbuds or he'll let it play in the background or whatever he
Yeah.
does. He loves podcasts. He was working for Podcast Radio in the UK, which is a radio station that plays episodes of podcasts on the radio.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's fine if you love listening to podcasts. That's why I put it out there
Right.
on all the audio podcast apps. But my kind of one of my one of my idols in broadcasting would be Regis Philbin.
Yeah.
And I think I would love to be the Regis of Knoxville.
Okay.
And Regis does all the things, like Ryan Seacrest, who replaced him, does all the things, MCs the events, is Mr. Man About Town, blah, blah, blah. That's what I try to do in terms of keeping the profile high enough. In radio and in broadcasting, it's like you're running for mayor every day. The election is every day. So that's why you got to keep going. Well, I know we got to wrap pretty soon, but that's kind of. I apologize. I know my wife's calling me too.
Okay. So
You're not the only one. Oh my! Are you serious?
She's called 12 times.
It's 4.5 hours. I thought Aaron Donovan was going to keep the record. I had no idea.
I'll go three quick questions here at the end, because it's kind of on that vein. Do you set goals or a checklist
For the podcast,
for
anything for life,
for work in general?
I keep a to-do list, and at this point, I don't know. I'm almost so busy trying to do. That's a hard question. I can't think of. I got to set a goal to write this book. So that's something that I need to discipline myself to get it done. I'm going to be more involved in the production of Scholars Bowls, so I have to help prepare. If you have any ideas for questions, I need some new questions. Things you think high school kids should know, send it my way. Okay. And I'll turn it into a TV question. That's the easy part. You got to have the fact and the answer, you know. So I've got work I've got to do. Got to book guests for the other PBS show they gave me called Up Close with Frank Murphy, which is a half-hour interview show. So they want me to interview local celebrities. So I got to find some and get them on the show.
So Saul Young,
he needs to come on Frank and Friends.
he was on Ramble Man way back in
Yes.
the day. He's the best.
His Instagram is hilarious.
Yeah, he is. Local celebrities, I always joke and say, well, it's Saul Young, Art Carmichael. Like anytime you're going local celebrities.
So I don't know if what goals do I have? I don't know. I'm kind of in that flux state where I don't really think I'm gonna. The chances of me getting another regular radio or TV job is I think I'm more on the Dolly Parton mindset of if you don't like the road you're on, pave a new one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. So I guess that's my goal, is to try to keep going, but not worry about it so much. I mean, I don't know. So much of it is out of my control.
Yeah.
That if I try to control it, it'll just make me sad and drive me crazy.
I always think something you said earlier, my way of looking at it is, I'm going to die someday. And I don't want to waste time on bullshit. Yeah. Like I've had this discussion with, somebody where I was talking about a friend. And I was like, him and his wife save all their money and they do nothing. and he's going to die with a
Yeah.
lot more money than me.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay my bills, and then I'm going to go explore the world. I'm going to go do stuff. I'm
Yeah.
going to buy art. That's
Nice.
actually a Saul Young piece right there.
That's beautiful.
I was like, I'm going to buy
I've heard you
art.
talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to buy art from artists that I enjoy.
Good.
I'm going to buy books. I'm going to enjoy my
Yeah.
life because you don't get that time back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in that same mindset where I just have to
Yeah.
let it go and say yes to things.
Yeah.
You know, that's improv taught me that.
Yeah.
Say yes. I get caught in a rut sometimes when I'm talking to people in broadcasting, where I like to cry poor mouth and complain about these gigs, these side hustles that I have that are not especially lucrative. And like I was telling you, I'm making less money. I really wish I hadn't said any of that, but I did. I don't care that I did, but I mean, in a way, I should have said. But you know what? I'm happier.
Yeah.
I'm happier than when I was working. I mean, I got paid a decent salary to be the producer of the Kevin and Bean show.
Yeah.
I'm happier now, making
Yeah.
nothing. A tenth of that, I'm happier.
Oh, I make no money from this. I lose
Yeah.
money on this podcast.
Yeah.
If I could dedicate more time to doing it weekly or something, I would do it.
Yeah.
But I just, but
It's a passion
I
project.
don't, and I also don't want to stress about guests. I don't want to
Yeah.
all that stuff. Do you know what you would like to do in the next 10 years? Do you,
Well,
other
breathe.
than finishing the book?
Other than and breathe, I'd like to
Yeah.
continue breathing because that I need to get. My goal is to get to, 80.
Are there paths you're thinking about, or you're just like, nope, I'm in the now?
I'm
and
still
that's-
in the throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks
Okay.
mode. I think PBS seems to enjoy this up close show that
Okay.
I'm doing to the point where they actually made social media posts about it, unsolicited by me. I had been the only one promoting it, and they posted something about it. I'm like, oh, wait. And they really liked my Adam Ragusa interview. He's a YouTube cook who lives in Knoxville now and has 2 million subscribers on YouTube.
Adam.
Ragusa, Ragusea.
Okay.
Ragusa.
Oh, that dude.
Yeah.
I've seen that dude.
So
Okay.
he's moved to Knoxville. He does these great cooking videos.
Yeah.
My son turned me on to him. I wasn't interested when he was in Macon, when Adam Ragusa was in Macon, Georgia. My son's like, this guy is a great cook, Dad. You should make his
Okay.
recipes. I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't have time to watch another thing. And then when my son calls up and says, he's moved to Knoxville, I'm like, oh, I'm going to start watching now. Because he wears local T-shirts and he does films around town, and it goes to the farmer's market, and he goes to Lakeshore Park to film an episode. So I'm interested. And he's a good guy, and I liked his show. Well, so the PBS says, similar to the old Scholars Bowl method, is if they can get me to bank enough of these episodes, if we can record enough of these up-close episodes, that they can start showing them more frequently.
Okay.
It's a co-production with UT. So the reason I ever got the show in the first place was like, oh, crap, we have to go film an episode of this interview show down at UT because the students are going to be the crew, and it's already committed. And the host, the woman who was hosting it, is leaving the station. They look around like, who can talk for half an hour? Who can interview a person? Who do we have? And they said, me. And I said, and so I did it. I've done they've shown 11 episodes. I think we've recorded 14 or 16. But they said once we get past 26, they can start showing it maybe once a month once a week instead of once a month. With the understanding that you're constantly adding. And they're like,
Yeah.
maybe we can film some in addition to the 6 we do at UT each semester. We can film a few more and bank them a little faster. So I'm trying to get more. I'm looking around for some more guests and interviews opportunities.
And they're
So that-
all about 26.
26 minutes, 45 seconds.
Oh, they're all exactly. Oh, God, they are exactly the same.
Or 47. So 26, 47.
47.
They're all
Good-
26, 47.
Good Lord.
Isn't that something?
That's-
Yeah, but they edit them. They tell
Yeah.
me to go 28. My instructions
Yeah.
are to take it to 28, and they're going to find something to nip and tuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone you like to work with?
Well, I'm so blessed to work with Dr. Bass already. I would love to do an episode of the podcast with my daughter because I think she's funny and charming, but she's got 5 kids and she's very busy. Very, very busy. So busy. I can barely, we try to have conversations on FaceTime until the rest of the family figures out what's going on. And then it's, Grandpa's on the phone. I don't want to talk to your grandpa. They're pulling the phone away from her. So that work with, I like interviewing people. I like talking to people. I mean, I can't think of anyone I would say no to.
Okay.
But on the other hand, kind of having a more of a solo-ish show
Yeah.
is pretty good.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I have someone in mind. I have someone in mind who I would love to have become the new regular co-host. I guess, and I'm still looking for my Kathy Lee, Kelly Ripa,
Right.
Regis sidekick. If I could find the perfect
I'll gladly
person-
put on a short dress and be
Yes.
on.
Well, for you, all dresses are short
Sorry.
because you're so tall.
I ruined an earnest moment.
That's fine. But I was hoping that Krisha would be that person, and
Yeah.
then she wasn't. I was hoping maybe Frady would be that person, and she's very sweet, but made it clear that no, opera is her thing, and
Right.
she was, happy to help me, and will always drop in when she's in town and co-host an episode.
Yeah.
And it's been beneficial to her life and career to
Yeah.
add that skill. But I need to, if I could find the regular co-host that I could just do a show with forever
Yeah.
until I'm 80, like when did Regis quit? When he was like 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That would be, but I don't know who it is because
Okay.
who else has that kind of drive and time and is willing to take
Yeah.
the risk on a non-paying job? It's one thing if I got a job as a radio station, like Joey Tack. My friend Joey Tack got a job as mornings on Wivik, and now they're trying to find him a co-host. A lot of people would take that job.
Yeah.
If you can tolerate corporate country
Yeah.
radio, which is its own beast. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying it's a thing. And in radio, when you make the leap from whatever you were doing into country, it's a one-way leap.
Oh, okay.
You have to rebrand and reframe yourself as a country radio DJ, and you have to kind of disown your hip hop and rock
My buddy
and roll
Red
past.
he's
Red McMahon
Yeah.
or
he's
McMahon. How does he say it? Right. I worked with him briefly at South Central.
super nice guy.
Yeah.
But he is now at Wivik, and I was like, man, that does not fit in my brain.
Yeah.
But he's a super nice guy.
Yeah. And he'll do well there.
Yeah.
Corporate radio is its own beast.
Well, I think here before we hit
Did we
5
run out
hours,
of? Did we run out of tape?
yeah, we ran out of tape.
Ran out of internet? We ran out of storage?
Yeah, all of my questions are now gray.
Yay!
We went clean.
Much like my beard.
All right. Thank you for being on.
Jody, thank you. I appreciate you. God bless.